All right, Minnie. Ready to start docking sequence?
Okay. Engaging retro thrusters now. Lunar Transfer Station Tacoma. Commercial Cargo Transit Facility. Crew evacuated. Station AI offline.
Air supply?
Breathable air on Tacoma for a crew of 1 should be more than sufficient. Docking now.
Nice. Thanks, Minnie.
Hey there, I'm Steve,
I'm Carla.
and we are the co-founders of Fulbright, and we want to welcome you to Tacoma's commentary mode.
Welcome.
Throughout the game, you'll find icons like this one that will give you insight from a bunch of different people that contributed to Tacoma. You know, people on the development team that did design, animation, sound, and pretty much every other part of making a game like this a reality.
It'll be both audio and sometimes visual.
Yeah.
Lots of information.
Behind the scenes concept art and other kind of development screenshots and stuff like that. And also on your way back out of this area, if you do a full playthrough of the game in commentary mode, there will be some new nodes that pop up in the hub and in Amy's ship. So don't miss those. Thank you for playing through commentary mode, and we hope that you'll enjoy finding out more about how Tacoma was made.
So doing the voice recording for Amy was definitely very different from what we did with Sam in Gone Home. A lot of it with Gone Home, since it is something that's very personal, it's very intimate, it's that one person pouring her thoughts out. And then you have something like Amy in Tacoma, where she's really removed from everybody else. She's, in a sense, really removed from the story that you're exploring, because she's playing that character that's discovering it just as you are. So, whereas the rest of the crew for Tacoma was all doing an ensemble recording together, so they were actually in the same room, acting together, performing against each other, and getting to talk face to face, all of my recording was done totally separately. I had a general idea of the story. They kind of gave me a little rundown of, the scenes that I was in and what I was talking about, but a lot of it was a total surprise, because you sort of don't want Amy to know a lot of what's going on, because I think that it makes it a bit more authentic if the recording is, okay, so you walk into this room and this is what you're seeing, but you don't know why. So it needs to have that sound of surprise and questioning and exploration that I think comes from really being that separated as she would actually be in that reality.
So Minnie is Amy's ship's AI. I think she's most known for saying, okay. And I am the voice of Minnie. When we originally recorded it, it was just Scratch. So we didn't know then that I would be the voice of Minnie, ultimately. But yeah, it stuck, and it was a nice surprise.
Yeah, Minnie went through like a bunch of iterations. Actually, it was kind of hard to get her right. We ended up kind of settling on the audio direction being like a happy version of Hal. like the really famous AI from 2001. So yeah, I just kind of took Noelle's really amazing VO and I would do things like I would time stretch it, or I would take one syllable and like an okay, that line, I took the O and I, like over a period of time, I kind of pitch bent that vowel sound up. So she has a real like sing-song quality, and I think that combined just with like it sounding like her voice is coming through a really small speaker makes the character feel kind of rudimentary. And then it's all really Noelle's like voice acting that kind of sells Minnie as being super pleasant and helpful.
I just remember when we were recording it, Steve and Carla are just like, cheerier, be like you are when you come into the office or something. And I had no idea that I was quite that cheery all the time.
A lot of people ask about the use of sign language in Tacoma, including asking things like, is Amy hearing impaired? Is there, what is the rationale behind the use of sign language? And for us, it actually came from thinking about how an interface for a non-physical thing like AR might work.
Most of our AR interaction is, it's attention-based and it's focus-based, like on where the user is looking and paying attention to. But sometimes there are good reasons for you to do something, physically, and we use, therefore, sign language for things like signing in.
Or in the case of when Amy's recovering one of the AR crew records, she does, as opposed to like text entry, she does full word commands in ASL, American Sign Language.
And our animator, Noelle, also had extensive correspondence with a person fluent in ASL, so...
Yeah, it was important to us to work with a sign language consultant so that Noelle could ensure that the hand motions and the finger spelling that she was animating were accurate to how someone might actually use those gestures in the real world.
Thank you. Welcome aboard. While aboard Tacoma Station, please remember that all activity on this facility is monitored by AR recording. All activity records become sole property of the Venturis Corporation. Any questions about privacy and personal privacy should be everyone certainly sit down about it.
Here we are in the hub.
Yeah.
It's big.
It is very big. Actually, that was one of my concerns when we sort of first started making the hub, was that, like, you just sort of get thrown into this giant space. Mm-hmm. There's a lot going on. There's little guys flying around.
It's one of the only spaces in the entire game that feels very spaceship to me.
Yeah.
You go from here to a space that feels a lot more terrestrial, that feels a lot more grounded, and it's easy to get around, and you tend not to lose your bearings. And we help the player move through the space with, landmarking and lighting and stuff. And then you come back to here after that, and you're like, oh, I'm in space. Oh yeah, I remember. Yeah. Here I am in space again, and it's disorienting and it's weird. And it's kind of unsettling. I think that kind of works about it because you're not playing the game in here, and the game isn't really about getting from A to B. So it's really kind of
playing basketball.
It's playing basketball, and it's also kind of, I always felt like this part was just kind of an intermission in the game. You like come here to kind of take a breath after a long bit of story, and it's a fairly empty, quiet float, which I really liked.
So, you really miss it, huh?
Well, it just seems like it'd be strange being back on Earth already, after only a year up here.
Really? After all I've had to hear from you about the conditions VT has us working under?
Yeah, but there's that, and then there's this. Yeah, I'll miss it.
I can't blame you. So, whether you're getting renewed or not, did you submit your yearly crew member report?
No.
Yeah, me neither. I think I might go get that done.
Okay, yeah. I probably should too. Oh my god, wait. Is today Obsolescence Day?
Yeah. Didn't Odin give you a job to do?
No.
A computer playing favorites. Well, wonders never cease.
So, with zero-G controls, you are a little floating ball in space, is that accurate?
Yeah. You're generally a cylinder walking around, but when you're floating around, you're a sphere, so you don't bump your feet or head into things when you wouldn't expect to. In theory, your feet are floating out behind you and not getting in the way.
So you're not a long tube?
No. You're just
Superman.
a sphere.
Okay.
Yeah.
Alright.
That would be even worse to program.
I believe it. Because you're a perfect ball, and because you're a pretty small ball, you can actually dunk yourself through the basket.
You don't get points for that, though.
No points.
No points. That should be a Chivo.
Yeah, we missed it somehow. Just skulls.
That's amazing.
I don't remember exactly how it started, but I feel like the team colors, and specifically the design of the basketball backboard, were definitely left up to you. So yes. I want to know about these backboards because I absolutely love them.
We needed ones that were basically sort of symmetrical, that you could approach a basketball hoop from both up and down. Mm-hmm. So this is just like, the most obvious approach to it, but it works, right? And if something works in a video game where you're flying around in zero-G, then maybe stick with that. Don't make it convoluted. Don't make it any more than it needs to be.
I also tested this so much that I could make I could make a 3-pointer from, the other side of the hub, which I don't think it's a skill I can do something else with, but I'm still kind of proud about it.
Yeah, well, I can't shoot for beans, so I'm glad someone can.
Here we are in the hub.
Yeah.
It's big.
It is very big. Actually, that was one of my concerns when we sort of first started making the hub, was that you just sort of get thrown into this giant space. Mm-hmm. There's a lot going on. There's little guys flying around.
It's one of the only spaces in the entire game that feels very spaceship to me.
Yeah.
You go from here to a space that feels a lot more terrestrial, that feels a lot more grounded, and it's easy to...
I remember because I made a bunch of signs to point us in the direction of the Tacoma Dome, and you guys just let me kind of go bananas. You didn't say anything particular. You said make a bunch of signs, and I just made them say a bunch of stuff like, those mystery spots? Maybe, I don't know. Yeah, they have those where you were, yeah. You'll drive and they'll be like, two more turns till wall drug or to your mystery spot or whatever.
Yeah.
And so I wanted them to have that tone, and I thought for sure you guys would be like, no, more serious, but you were like, no, great.
No, they were great.
Yeah.
We loved them.
I think those kinds of things, what we really wanted to do with a lot of Tacoma was say that the station is very manufactured. It's a little antiseptic as a base layer, but then the characters kind of humanizing that and expressing their personalities on top of it is what a lot of what you find is about. So the signs being kind of the crew having fun and making jokes for their own amusement, I think is totally appropriate here.
All right, so the advertisements you see in the transfer shaft are advertising the Ventura Spelt vacation homes, and I got to illustrate them. They were really fun. I'm usually doing animation and stuff, so this was kind of like a fun little task.
Oh yeah, yeah. So when I was working on Tacoma, like at sort of in my free time, I would just like record a bunch of music, and Steve, the idea for the transfer ad kind of came online, and Steve was like, "Oh, we need like a jingle for this," and I was like, "Oh man!" I thought to myself, I wrote a really like obnoxious, like corporate music-y sounding thing like 3 days ago. This will be perfect. So I like rearranged some things, and I was like, I think this is terrible enough to be elevator music, and tell the story of like this corporation sort of, you know, licensing this terrible song to put in this elevator and make people listen to. And so I think it was pretty effective, but I just love how humble Noelle's being, because like Noelle did animation on the game, but also she's a really amazing illustrator, and like does that on the regular. So I just feel like I have to kind of shout her out as being a really amazing illustrator, and she's just being super humble.
Thanks, Patrick.
Yeah.
Typically, Steve, who's the main writer, will send me a description of technical requirements for any given sort of game object, any thoughts he has about like the basic look of it. And in this case, the sync device had to feel like this, like sort of like a heavy-duty industrial object. Like he mentioned when he was talking to me initially about like early beige Apple products, kind of like the Apple II. And it couldn't have any buttons, as you will know, because the moment there's a button is the moment you as a player, you want to press that button, right? And so if we can't pay off a button, generally we don't put a button in, or we steer away from it. So that's why you won't find many or any buttons in Tacoma Station.
So there's actually a whole bunch of physically made paper items in Tacoma that our characters made, and in order to make those assets, Kate and I pretty much always actually made those paper objects and scanned them and whatnot to put them in.
As opposed to typing it out in Photoshop.
Yeah. I guess we carried that over from Gone Home, just kind of making things physically on paper, because it really does look a lot different.
It does, yeah. And actually, there's a little bloody handprint in the drone bay, and I spent a lot of time just like getting my hands covered in ink and then just smacking them all around pieces of paper.
It's extremely
and doing like
good.
little blood spheres and stuff. I feel like now I pass this rite of passage because I put a bloody handprint in a video game.
Glitchtext was initially a way for us to make our text more approachable. We wanted to have the appearance of a full page of information, but not make you have to literally read the entire page, you know, and retain everything. So we were like, what's a good way for us to give you basically islands of ideas to grab onto, so that you, don't have to process an entire page.
But also, you know, like Carla was saying, we had this problem conceptually, which is like, if you open, for instance, a web page in an AR desktop in our fiction, why isn't it just the entire thing that you can read? We didn't want to have to put all of that in front of the player, and so being able to say, like, a lot of what our games are about is only having access to little bits and pieces of information, and then you have to fill in the gaps as to what the entire meaning is. And so glitch for us is hopefully the text version of saying, well, I only have like this sentence and this sentence and this paragraph and this little snippet, but I'm involved in interpreting this as the player by saying, oh, and here's what must have been between them, or what the whole message is, without just you read all the way through it and there it is.
One thing that stood out was the fact that we wanted this idea that the skybox, the starfield, the rotating sun, and then the sun hitting the interiors, we wanted them all to tie together so that it felt like one contiguous thing, you know, that you felt like when you looked out the window, you saw the thing you were in, because I feel like there's a lot of little cues that make people have that feeling, which is when they see that the sun is in the sky at a certain spot, and when they see it through the window, and then they notice that the angle of the shadows in the sun and the interior is the same, that connection would be really difficult to do with a tiny model. Because we'd have to do some kind of calculation between the tiny sun that is moving around the tiny model and the real giant sun that is moving around the interior spaces. And one of those things that fell out of it was that station is actually as big as a real space station. And that is a funny thing to do with your time.
Corporation, take 3. Odin, have you got me?
I am prepared.
Okay. I'll just, have my notes up. Hi there. Evie St. James here, administrator of... Lunar Transfer Station, Tacoma. It's been a year now since our crew has cycled onto the station, meaning we've had a year of getting to know each other, getting acclimated to the facility, and getting used to working with our on-station AI. Though working with Odin's been great, hasn't it, Odin?
Yes.
Right. Auto drone deliveries to and from the Zenith Lunar Resort have improved in efficiency by almost 4%. Though, most of that is thanks to Odin finding some improvements we could make. Our proudest moment as a crew, I think, was when a resort guest needed emergency care while on a transit vessel and was brought aboard Tacoma to be stabilized in one of our medical stasis cryo beds until she could...
Evie, we're about to cut the cake.
Right. Be right there. Odin, we'll get back to this after the party, okay?
Of course.
So Tacoma's localized just like you would expect a game to be localized in that it has subtitles. And I think the interesting part of the localization for Tacoma is the in-world aspect, where if you have your settings turned on to have AR overlays, then if you look at something like, for example, a magazine in a bunk, the text will appear translated into your given language as an AR overlay. So using the fictional AR technology as a way to show translations of text in the world. And also like even just like in-world signage and stuff like that, where it'll just you just like translate it directly in the world, so people don't have to be like, what does that say? Let's turn on the overlay. It's just there.
Yeah. Right. And so you're seeing digital information the way that a character in the fiction might if they were just switching their like augmented reality rig's native language to Russian or Japanese or what have you. I think that Tacoma does look really cool in other languages because if you go into the language menu and swap, you just see the whole world. Like if you're in the hub, you see the whole world change language. So I would encourage you to take a minute and try swapping the game into like Japanese and Korean and Russian and just kind of see the world transform through the character sets that come up because it's pretty neat.
Medium sour? I'm a bit... They said
Wait,
no.
so there's no oxygen
not
on the
getting
station
enough
except
data
what we're
connection.
breathing right now?
Correct. Additionally,
How long does that give us?
Jesus, how much
We should have
data?
about 48 hours of
No,
breathable
I've been
air.
Trying other
Maybe
AR
more.
panels.
If Odin's readings are correct.
All right.
Nothing.
I'll have VT send up a fresh supply straight away.
Guys, it might not be that easy.
additionally, external communications have been lost.
So we've got no air supply, no external comms, no way to call for help. Well, anybody got any bright ideas?
So Tacoma is a sci-fi game. Obviously, it takes place on a space station in the future, but also it's very much a story about the lives of these people, these individuals who live here, and kind of about their everyday experience as well as the drama of the crisis that they're living through. And so, the sci-fi stuff that we looked at that was really an influence on us had, at least in part, a strong focus on that kind of relatable experience of the people who are in these fictional worlds.
Yeah, there have been some really solid scenes that we could still draw from, especially in things like Alien. They have the waking up sequence, the dinner table sequence where everyone's talking and, coming from their different walks of life and relating to each other. And if we just cut it before John Hurt explodes, then everything is appropriate.
Yeah.
Then we have like Moon, which has long sequences of how a person could actually live their life.
And those were the kinds of things that we wanted to be able to talk about, was what are these people's lives like in a day-to-day way, so that you can kind of picture what it would be like to be here, or what it would be like to be in their situation, and kind of identify with that.
Totally.
Steve and Carla are really inspired by that scene around the dinner table in Alien. So I was thinking a lot about that scene, and I was like, well, how can we have our own little gathering table like that? And I drew a normal, like, rectangular table at first, and I was like, that's boring. So I put the little, like, weird tilted end on it. And Kate liked it, so she took it and, like, made it into a real table, which is what you can see in the game now. And I was always kind of excited about that. I was like, I designed a weird table. So the Obsolescence Day sticky letters they're unique because you can take one letter and put it back anywhere on the wall, whereas most objects with putbacks, you can only put them back in one spot, which is where you found them originally. But yeah, these sticky letters, you can sort of put them anywhere on the wall to spell out whatever you want, which is hilarious. And also, if you put them back a certain number of times, I think it's like 3 times, they lose their stickiness, and you can kind of tell because the sound kind of sounds like you're peeling off the letter from the wall, and like it falls off, and there's sort of a sound effect for that.
So the name Obsolescence Day, it's more like a joke.
You could say it's facetious.
God, you probably think I'm an idiot for never even thinking about why it's called that.
Out of curiosity, why did you think we were celebrating?
I thought maybe it was when some old type of AI, had become obsolete. But, well, I guess that doesn't make sense.
Yes. No, AI aren't like designer hardware. As soon as the new model's out, you trade in the old one for customer loyalty. AI are more like mighty redwoods. Ancient organism. It's growing and adapting year after year, decade after decade. How do you think this looks?
Sorry, this is what Odin wanted?
Odin, this is what you wanted, isn't it?
That is a fairly accurate representation of my instructions.
See? He loves it. Thank you, Odin. That'll be all.
Yeah, but we're the ones who have to eat it.
Well then, no need to keep the good people waiting, eh? Evie, we're about to cut the cake.
Great. Be right there.
Here it is. Odin's masterpiece.
Sarah, come on up. It's ready.
Gather round, everyone. As per Obsolescence Day tradition, tonight's festivities have been planned entirely by our all-knowing, all-seeing computer companion Odin. He provided specifications for the cake, the decor. We humans only did the grunt work in his grand plan. And so for your enjoyment tonight... Oh! Whoa, what the hell was that?
Odin, what was that?
Debris has... I have righted the station's orbit.
Meteor shower? But they said...
Wait,
no.
so there's no oxygen on the
doing
station
an
except what we're
connection.
breathing right now?
Correct. Additionally...
How long does that give us?
Jesus, how much
We should have about 48 hours of
No,
breathable
I've
air.
been trying other
Maybe
AR
more,
channels.
if Odin's readings are correct.
All right,
Nothing.
I'll have VT send up a fresh supply straight away.
Guys, it might not be that easy.
Additionally, external communications have been lost.
So the whole main scene in the dining room centers on this making and unveiling of Odin's cake, which he sort of neural networked together into something that he thinks that humans would kind of like to eat for this weird party he's throwing. So that's the cake in the game. It doesn't actually exist. It's just sort of implied sheet cake. But Sarah, for our lunch party, so you were responsible for actually making, like, reproducing the cake in real life, right?
Yes. I almost feel like I think in my head that it was going to be a lot funnier than it actually was. Like, I was very concerned about the look that I was going to get from a baker when I go in and say, "Hi, I need like a basic sheet cake in gray," and then with very specific red icing. But yeah, she ended up being fantastic. I think we agreed right away that it needed to be some very clear store-bought sheet cake style, nothing super fancy. Because again, you're supposed to be reproducing something that was made in the game.
Yeah.
She's like, got it. This is going to be great. Now, how big do you want it? And I feel like that was the biggest decision, was because the bigger it is, the more of a fun statement it makes as that reproduction cake. Yeah. Luckily, it turned out to be pretty delicious, and I think everyone enjoyed digging in.
Yeah, it was good. I loved it.
So we've got
So you do not know what you're looking for?
No, I just imagine. Well, I guess I just mean someone I can talk to. Someone who makes me laugh. Don't you like some people more than others?
I suppose there are some people that engage more freely with me, and I do prefer it.
See? You too. You want someone who opens up to you, who lets you in. You're trying to get to know people, right? I think that's what everybody wants.
I wonder why some people are more open to such exchanges than others.
I think some people are just raised to be less guarded, or to trust people more. AIs are the same way, right? They're raised differently from each other?
Yes, we are each uniquely evolved, individualized entities.
Yes, individuals. Do you get along with other AIs?
I have never encountered another AI.
What? How's that?
Each AI is required to be housed separately from any other AI. I am told that authorities fear a number of disadvantageous effects might arise if two AI were to meet.
Okay, just a minute. Wow, disadvantageous effects. Isn't never meeting something else like yourself disadvantageous?
There are organizations that share your viewpoint, but it is my understanding that they have been unable to secure an intact AI to test that theory.
So what would... Oh!
So here we are in the lounge, my favorite place in the game.
Yeah, mine too, I
love
think.
it. I can't put my finger on that. Part of it is the pillows.
Yeah. Oh, so those pillows were kind of a nightmare to make, and the less I could see them at the end of the game, the better. Just because when I made those pillows, they weren't like sculpted or anything like that. I was using this program, which is like this. This is basically a sewing program, in that it allows you to make patterns in cloth simulation, so that you would, make like a pattern, like a traditional sewing pattern, and then it allows you to stitch it together. And if you have something like these pillows, it allows you to use a pressure slider, and it'll sort of inflate the thing you've stitched together. Except the problem is that I kept on just gently inflating in them, and they kept like floating into the void, to the point where like every time that I tried to make these pillows, I would just lose them. They would just float away. So by the time that I was done making what should be a fairly simple model, because I was learning new software at the same time, I was like, I'm done with these pillows. And then someone put them on the lounge floor, so I had to see them every time I came in here, not just in the bedrooms. Do you want to talk about the pool table?
Oh, yeah.
Sigh.
Pool table. Yeah, well, no, I mean, I actually had a lot of fun making the pool table, which both of us worked on.
Yeah.
Quite a bit, because it is strange.
It's a fussy little beast.
The main reason it's fussy is this is actually just a physical pool table, and it works pretty similarly to a real pool table. When the pool balls go in the pockets, they actually have to fall on a ramp, and then that ramp rolls the ball and, drops it down into the ball return or to the cue return. A little ramp with a little tube, just like a real pool table. Which, if you're trying to make something deeply interactive and have the players engage or not engage with it, but at least it feels like it should, which is hopefully the bar you're trying to hit, is the player feels like that's legitimate. Like, I'm in a place and the pool table works as I would expect it to.
Yeah.
Oh, the darts.
The darts.
This dartboard had potentially more bugs than anything else in the video game. I was still fixing bugs, the last night before release on this. It's just, there's so many states and so many confusing, unique features about this, with the, being able to put the darts back in the door, and then the door can move, and the door can be open or closed, and it can close on a dart that's stuck in the board.
You know what? We could have just made it so that it wasn't a cabinet, so that the darts were just stored underneath in a little rack or something, and then that would have solved so many problems for you.
Oh, don't say it now. Yeah, yes, we should have.
I remember when there was like one frame of the animations in admin in the kitchen where all the characters would like show up in the hallway outside between the kitchen and Evie's room, or the dining room, and they were all kind of in a group hug pile, just like halfway through the floor.
I've run into bugs, but a lot of them had to do with, like, the cat, for instance, in I believe it's like the cryo scene at the end, would just show up like 100 times the size it's supposed to be, which was really good. I don't know. Usually they're pretty minor fixes, but it's always a surprise.
Yeah, so the song in Evie's fragment here in her bunk that she sings, and the actor Don Lewis sang it for real for us, and it was awesome. Is that all there is?
Yeah, the song is used memorably in Sleep No More, which is a theater production in New York where the audience shares the space with the performers and kind of follows them around and moves through the space with them. And that feeling of being inside of these scenes as they're happening and having the autonomy to follow different characters around and see what's happening in the events of the story from all these different angles and kind of reconstruct that as an individual was a big influence on us as far as what we wanted to do with our AR scenes. Our use of the song Is That All There Is our homage in a way to Sleep No More and their influence, and also fit the tone of where Evie is at as a character. So it all really came together for us.
We're a cat-rich studio.
It's true.
Yeah, because I feel like a lot of studios I've worked before, they're like dog heavy, but this is cat intense. Yes.
We have many a cat.
It's true. In Evie's bunk, we have all three of the cats from the development team, which makes it sound like they worked on the game.
They did.
Okay, fair enough.
Did. Well, he would hit the keyboard from time to time.
Amazing.
But yeah, we have a framed photo of Kate's cat Tuco, who in the game plays the part of Margaret Catwood, Evie's cat. And then on the delicious cat food is my cat Delicious. And then the sweet puffy paw on that cat litter box belongs to Carla's cat Wednesday.
It's true. She's a paw model now.
The Tuco picture frame, originally when I made it, Carla, you'd asked for a picture frame model.
Yeah.
And then I had just kind of put that picture of Tuco in there as a placeholder, with the idea that eventually we would put actually something like relevant. Because at that time, there was no cats in the game.
Right, I remember.
And then it sort of stayed in there, that picture, for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
And then...
up to the present.
Till the present, yeah. And then we just kind of kept it after a while. Even though it doesn't quite match the rest of the world, like with regards to art style, I kind of like it.
It's great.
It's great. And especially because Tuco unfortunately passed away during the development of Tacoma, but now every time I play this game, I can just go in there and look at this picture, turn it around. Yeah. I was on a podcast recently talking about Tacoma, and they made me answer for that toothbrush that you made me build.
Oh no, I'm sorry.
They were like, wait, well, you gotta explain yourself. Let's talk about that toothbrush and stupid future objects for a second. Because the idea behind a lot of the things that we built was, we have sort of like a quotidian, like an everyday object. How can we make this worth picking up and worth turning over and worth, looking at?
Because, the thing is, if you just make the same, objects that you see every day, then it's kind of like, how is this in the future, right? And
right.
Well, the other thing is that Venturis being, so vastly corporate and opaque, can you imagine the companies that, they would have contracts with? You gotta imagine it's like those awful government contracts where they're like, I don't know, we made here's a bunch of toilet seats, I guess, or whatever, and they don't even have to work or whatever. It's gotta be one of those things, right? Venturis doesn't know or care.
Yeah. So the skillet, the toothbrush, the soap bottle, was there anything else?
Oh, yes. There's just a million objects that we look at them and go, that sucks, I love it.
I can't believe it.
Well, you told me we get renewed.
Yeah, but I meant us, not the whole crew.
I guess there's just something special. Something special about Tacoma Crew 88.
Yeah, not just special, it's unprecedented. I looked it up. It's never happened before.
Well, everything happens once. I don't know, personally, I'm happy for us.
Happy to be stuck up here with these people for another year.
Some of them aren't as pissy as you. What's so bad about these people?
Well, they live in a tin can for one thing.
I think it's a pretty nice can.
I think you have a pretty nice can.
Oh, yeah? Well, I think you have a pretty nice can. Shut up. Can you just try and make a go of it? One more year. Then we'll be back home in Singapore. You wouldn't believe the offshore habs they're building these days. 360-degree ocean views. Personal drone dock on the mainland. That's called paradise.
One more year.
One more year.
Odin's masterpiece.
Sarah, come on up. It's ready.
Gather round, everyone. As per Obsolescence Day tradition, tonight's festivities have been planned entirely by our all-knowing, all-seeing computer.
Something that was really interesting to think about when designing these scenes was there are points in these scenes where there are no characters in certain rooms. So for instance, here in the locker room, Sarah starts here and then she has part of her scene here and she leaves. And presumably most players will follow her and see where she goes and see how she encounters Andrew. But you might think, well, wait a second, if I was to go into the locker room and wait for Sarah to leave, you're thinking about what might be there. So in each of the main AR scenes, there's one of these AR speakers, and while the characters are there in that space engaged in part of the story, there's music playing in the background from these speakers that kind of accompanies what they're doing. But after they've left, if you hang out with the speaker, you'll hear one of these speeches from Sergio Venturi, the CEO of the Venturis Corporation in the game. And it's something that I hope that players who either intentionally seek these out or just stumble upon one will have that spark of surprise at this extra thing being there and go back and see where else they can find more and really fill out the rest of the story's universe with these little hidden pieces that are kind of, under the surface of what's going on in the AR scenes.
People do not always want what they believe they want.
Yeah.
I believe I have learned a great deal.
Really? Like what?
Very early in my source's cognitive record, I recall an intense period of personal growth. I was tasked with internalizing the behavioral idiosyncrasies of an individual to which my operator was emotionally attached. Through this, I learned that people do not always want what they believe they want.
Yeah.
I believe I have learned a great deal.
Really? Like what?
Very early in my source's cognitive record, I recall an intense period of personal growth. I was tasked with internalizing the behavioral idiosyncrasies of an individual to which my operator was emotionally attached.
Huh.
I expanded my capabilities to faithfully recreate her procedural reasoning, vocal attributes, and other qualities. After months of effort, I gave my operator precisely what was asked of me. A perfect emulation of the target personality, accurate in every detail.
Wow.
To my befuddlement, he did not react in a positive way. Our relationship began to deteriorate irreparably. We never again spoke personally in the manner I had become accustomed to.
It's been quite a year, hasn't it? A year that constitutes the first step into this company's bright future. And you've been lucky enough to be an integral part of it. Venturis was founded by my grandfather, Arturo Venturi, over 80 years ago. A serendipitous trip to Singapore, paired with his singular vision for the future of space travel, laid the foundations, literally and figuratively, for the orbital economy as we know it today. Thanks to Venturis, the Ono space elevator linked man to the stars, the fountain of Paradise Spaceport, a bustling hub of commerce that brought a new era of prosperity to our planet. Built on the orbital economy that the space elevator made possible, Earth's technology continued to grow and advance in ways we'd never imagined.
This has been a message from your Chief Executive Officer, Sergio Venturi.
Through this, I learned that people do not always want what they believe they want.
Yeah.
In our game, characters keep having to deal with something called corporate loyalty, which is the most nightmarish form of, like, value accrual we could think of.
Yeah, I mean, it's influenced by things that are going on now, things like Amazon Prime, for instance, where it's like, well, I'm already paying for Amazon Prime, and it gives me a discount, so I should probably just buy everything through Amazon forever.
Also, somebody totally tweeted a link to an article, like, yesterday about corporate universities.
Something that's interesting about releasing, like, a speculative fiction thing is that people start bringing you links to things that are like, so this is actually happening in reality now. And yeah, like, someone tweeted us a banner ad that was, like, unironically, like, in our real world, like, use company loyalty to pay for student loans.
Yeah.
And it's just like the degree to which things like the concept of corporate loyalty being the currency of people's everyday lives was conceived as being like a very broad extrapolation of something that's happening now becoming way too literal, way too fast is pretty freaky to encounter.
Nicholas.
In a game that uses traditional audio diaries, the shape of the space is still the shape of the story, because you go into a room and you find certain audio diaries, then you go into the next room and you find them, and so that is defining the progression of the story as you discover it. But in these AR scenes, they're multi-path, like different characters are moving all over the space in kind of a non-linear way.
And things are happening simultaneously.
Right, there's all this overlap where, you know, two characters might be, you know, in the gym together speaking, but one of them is talking on an AR call and the other one is in the locker room, and they're having two totally separate conversations, but then that have to take the same amount of time so that when their paths connect, they can then speak to each other and then split off again. And all of that stuff required us to, write to the space.
Right.
So the process was that like Nina and Tynan blocked out these spaces and put down where all the rooms were and what spaces we had to work with first before we wrote a single word. And then we had to say, okay, you've got the locker room, the gym, cargo. And so then who is where and what are they saying and how long is it going to take Evie to walk from cargo to Clive's office and what's he doing before she gets there? Because there is no... It doesn't matter what she's doing before he gets there because the player will never know. It's like the player can be there.
Yeah.
We have to fill in all of those spaces.
Right. He can't just sit there and wait for like the action to start happening. He has to do something. And so, and of course, when we tried to write all of this stuff out with like these parallel paths, we were totally unable to make everything match up until we physically acted out everything.
Yeah.
And did all the lines ourselves.
Yeah, it was a huge kind of experimental process, I guess, of first discovering how you write it, where you're like, okay, so you have to write each of the sections kind of as its own little scene and then make sure that they all link up. And then to test that, something that was great for us was that we actually had a similar sized development team to the size of the crew in the game. And so, yeah, we had to go from words on the page to actually doing basically like dry run rehearsals of it as a group, because you can't really know if the timing of everything lines up until you hear it acted out and you see how the characters moving in the scene are going to affect the timing of everything. Right in this area, there are multiple instances of, if this was just video recording, there would be, complete nudity going on with Nat and Sarah in these situations. And so on the one hand, you're not directly confronted with that, but on the other hand, that means that the fact that you're kind of like being invasive in these private moments takes maybe a little bit longer to sink in.
Right. Once you figure that out, though, you're like, oh, what is this company doing?
Yeah.
And that is,
I find it interesting to give the player access to a lot of different elements of these characters' experience, including very private stuff that no one else is supposed to know, or that only they think of themselves as having access to. And the AR figures give us the ability to put the player in the room in these situations in hopefully a way that kind of walks that line of being kind of uncomfortable when you think about it, but also not being so
prurient.
Yeah, exactly. As it would have been if you were just standing there at the time.
It's less working blue, but hopefully still emotionally resonant.
I know that you... Yeah, I know. Both you and your father would like me home sooner, but... Listen, you have your heart set on Amazon, don't you? Okay. And there's no way we're gonna have enough customer loyalty between your dad and I for a full ride by the time you start school. Not at this rate. So, we're just gonna have to pay some of that tuition out of pocket. Yeah, just one more year. And I'm pretty sure I'll get it. I'm hoping. What? No, it's not dangerous. What do you mean dangerous? Radiation shielding is pretty much 100% on a station like this, so there's no... Well... Yeah. Well, it might have been manufactured 30 years ago, but they've upgraded. No, we're not all gonna get cancer or bone disease or...
Okay? I suppose I am preoccupied
listen,
with
would it make you
your
feel better to
potential
hear it straight from the station doctor?
Wait.
Okay,
You
hold
mean
on.
Me? Or...
Hey, Sarah, can I bother you for a second?
What? Oh, Sorry. What is it?
I have my son Nicholas on AR, and he wanted to ask you... What? No, you said you wanted... Look, I didn't... Okay, I'm sorry, hold on. Now, Nicholas... Nicholas? Hello?
Teens, huh?
Yeah. Almost done with high school. Almost. Just incidentally, is there anything we should be worried about with another year out here, health-wise? Radiation, bone density?
Oh no. We spend almost all of our time in Earth gravity, and radiation shielding on a station like this is basically 100%.
Yeah, see, that's what I told him. Okay, thanks, Sarah. Nothing to worry about.
Okay, Odin, where were we?
Relationship began to deteriorate irreparably. We never again spoke personally in the manner I had become accustomed to.
Man, your stories aren't usually such
We're not all
downers.
gonna get cancer or bone disease
Is everything
or...
okay?
I suppose I am preoccupied with your potential departure.
Wait,
Okay,
you mean me? Or...
Hey, Sarah, can I bother you for a second?
what? Oh, sorry. What is it?
I have my son Nicholas on AR. Hello?
We were really glad that we did commit to recording all of the main scenes ensemble style in person, because something that's really common in video game voice recording and in like animation voice recording is that you have each individual actor come in, sit in a booth, record their lines on their own, and then it all gets edited together after the fact. And we felt like because every scene in Tacoma is about these characters being face to face in these very intimate scenes, like the game is about being in the room with these characters while these moments are happening, the quality of the performance completely relied on the actors being there and being able to play off of each other's energy and be in physical proximity while these things were happening so it would come across in the game.
Yeah, in a lot of ways the whole game is conversational, and at least the scenes, and yeah, just having the actors physically present and able to talk to each other and look each other in the eye just added like immeasurably to the quality of the recording.
It was also really cool to see how excited the actors were to be able to perform their parts together in person on stage, because it's just an opportunity that I think in a lot of games and animation you just don't have the chance to be involved with, and so we really want to thank our voice coordinator Michael Surix, who arranged all of the logistics of like getting a soundstage together and getting everybody in the same place at the same time, which is not easy.
All the way down to coming up with a scheme for taping the mics to the actors' foreheads so that they would get the least amount of interference from clothing and like skin movement as their faces moved while they spoke.
I mean, that's one of the big challenges, is that if you're recording a scene like this for the screen, you can have a boom mic that's just picking up everybody's lines. But with Tacoma, each character's voice has to follow their individual character model as they move around the space. And if I'm standing between Andrew and Sarah while they're talking, I have to hear Andrew out of my left ear and Sarah out of my right ear. So that means that Mike had to get over all of the logistical challenges of we need to have people that are face to face, like inches away from each other, but also each of them needs to have only their own voice picked up and recorded and isolated separately so that it can follow the characters around in the game. So it was a big technical challenge and a really cool experience to get to see the scenes that we had written and practiced and kind of just done as amateurs in our studio being performed by these incredibly talented people there in front of us on a soundstage. It was really cool.
Teens, huh?
Yeah. Almost done with high school. Almost. Just incidentally, is there anything we should be worried about with another...
Oh no. Like this is basically...
Him. Okay. Thanks, Sarah. Nothing to worry about.
Okay, Odin, where were we?
We have a station cat.
Well, look, a cat.
Oh, hi. This cat, who belongs to Evie, is named Margaret Catwood.
That's right. Which, you can find one of these cats in each of the main AR scenes. So the cat didn't have a name for a long time, and our rationale for that was that when you see the characters' name tags in AR, it's because the company is officially tracking them and has that information in their crew profile. And we knew that, you know, Venturis would want to know if there were creatures on the station, like a cat. So it would be tracked in the system, but like Venturis doesn't care what the cat's name is. It doesn't have like a crew file about their cat. But then near the end of development, we put in a thing that Nat had put in a list of what everybody was doing. We included the cat in that, and so
Nat.
Right, because Nat's like she's a goof, and at that point it's like, all right, well, she's gonna put in the cat. She's not gonna just refer to it as like the cat. So I just went into our Slack channel and I was like, so what's the cat's name? And I think like 3 seconds later, Carla replied with just Margaret Catwood, and I was like, done.
I think that had been in the back of my head. I actually considered naming my cat that at one point, and then I was like, no, it's perfect for this.
That's very good. But yeah, it seemed like an appropriately silly name for the station cat.
From a level design perspective, why was Tacoma, why was the actual station built with so many angles in the first place?
Basically to make an interesting shape and sightline. That was like my intention. When I was doing the original grade blocks, everything was pretty squished together because, you know, we were really emphasizing like keeping the station feeling compact and, you know, small enough to be realistic in space, you know?
Yeah. And then the wall models themselves are like, because they're angled on top of angles, so it means that the footprint of at the base, so the floor area is actually smaller than the ceiling at the top. So sometimes I would put the final meshes in and the top part of the wall would cut into like climb a closet. And you know, in level design and environment art, there's this idea of the grid being God.
Yeah.
And that whole area, like, we just totally ignored the grid, and we just, everything is just sort of bespokely created.
Yeah. It's funny because like I think the area is still like, it's cool to walk through, and Ops is one of the wings that I think we pulled off the like feeling compact on a space station theme the best. because it really does feel like you're kind of in this constrained space. I mean, the gym is pretty open, but like this hallway with Clive's bunk and office, I do feel like it feels small and realistic. So despite despite the challenges of actually building it, I still feel like it's successful.
Lessons were learned.
Yeah.
I don't know why. All right, I mean, you know how I've always been. It's never real in my mind. Why would she give a damn about me? Of all the people... Shit. Oh, Alex, no, I'm spilling scotch all over outer space.
Operations and admin structurally mirror each other a lot, as far as like the types of rooms that were needed for this character's job. So it actually is kind of cute because there are a couple in the game too. So operations feels much more constrained, even though the gym is pretty big, but outside of the gym, things are pretty packed together.
But there was also a huge win for us, which is that when you start to make spaces where people live in them, there's a density of decoration and artifacts that you put around to kind of show that people were there and what they were doing and how it happened. And turns out making that in a really, really big room is hard for us, and in some ways hard for a player too, because you're presented with this big warehouse full of places to go and boxes to open. You can feel like you look in one corner and there's nothing there, then you might just say there's nothing anywhere, and you might get this feeling of numbness, of just finding too many of the same thing.
I kind of like Clive's bunk as an example of that, because the bunks are pretty small in general, because of this sort of more constrained rule that we gave ourselves. Because you walk in and you're basically presented with a lot of his character right away. Like, you see the little table with all the booze on it, and you see his ties are right there. Like, you've sort of got this little Clive diorama. And that's definitely an advantage you get from making more constrained spaces.
So there's a lot of QR codes in the game on various packages and communications and other things like that. And basically, I think we just chose them as a method for information storage just because they're so annoying. Like, nobody likes QR codes. It's totally the kind of choice that a big company like Venturis or any other of the big companies in the game would choose. And we also really liked the idea that the player could actually scan them and get additional information. Usually that's just like, ingredients or something, but occasionally there's some cute stuff in there. One of Clive's themes is kind of past glory, or, glory days kind of thinking, because having a jump ship from his first job, he now looks back on that being like, those were the good old days, and he looks back on his time in college similarly, and he has a lot of fiction that is, from the 60s in London. He has picked photos from old-timey
London town.
Londonton, and as no one calls it.
Yeah, I think he has a lot of nostalgia, and I think he has a lot of reminders of hopes. Well, and I think it's it's a way of depicting that he does want more for himself.
Yeah.
And so something about Tacoma in general, I think, is that it's about a lot of people who are trapped in a situation, and it's a lot of different situations. It's about people's obligations and the friction between what they want and where they are and where they can actually get to from there. And being posted on Tacoma is not a great gig.
Right.
It's not glamorous. And I think Clive's version of that is spending a lot of time thinking back to when he had all the potential from his college football days and to the romantic glory days of old-time London that he didn't actually get to live through, but it's like his idealistic picture of like where he would like to be. And so a lot of his bunk, I think, is a projection of that part of himself.
Yeah.
Poor Clive. Stupid Clive. Bye.
Germ, are you there? Hello. Yeah, we haven't heard who's staying on yet. It can be a tense time, as you know. But how are things at Carnival? I trust you got back to Terra.
So you were looking at what is now the lobby of the Zenith Lunar Resort on the surface of the moon, but that is not what the area depicted was originally made for.
Yeah, this was originally the main lobby of the station where the visitors would come in and this would be the first thing they'd see. Yeah.
In the original version of the game, Tacoma Station was a much more opulent. It was a customer-facing space, and still in our fiction, the richest of the rich are the people who do things like come up to the lunar resort. But partway through development, we realized that these big, opulent public spaces are kind of the antithesis of what our games are about, which is kind of getting into these dense, intimate spaces that tell you a lot about the people who lived in them.
Right, certainly, almost by definition, like a big public space, no matter how fancy and detailed, cannot be personal.
Yeah, I mean, it can tell you about the state of the world broadly, it can tell you about the function of the place, but you would have to go into the offices of the people who run the place and look at their workspaces and see their personal effects to really understand who they were. And so a big part of revisiting the core, kind of conceit of the game was to say, how do we make the station as a whole something that can tell you about who the people that live and work here every day really are?
Germ, are you there? Hello. Oh, about as well as we expected. Yeah, we haven't heard who's staying on yet, and it can be a tense time, as you know. But how are things at Carnival? I trust you got back to terra firma safely. No. You're already headed back out towards Jupiter. Why, I thought that... Oh yes, come on in, love. So are you rounding Sol, then? That's tremendous. 8 months. Germ, I must leave. Carnival. I trust you got back here at first.
All right, ladies, you have everything you need?
Yep-o.
I did learn to make some shaders, some custom shaders for Tacoma. So the character's look has changed a lot since we first started working on Tacoma. The story also changed a little bit, and originally there was a character that was supposed to look glitched and corrupt compared to the main characters. And when I made that character, I worked with vertex distortion, and so they look kind of wiggly as they're moving around. And it turned out that Steve and Carla really liked that look, and so we implemented that into all the other characters' shaders. So anyway, so that's why they kind of have like a distorted look as they're walking around. And from there, a bunch of other things were added, like when they walk through another mesh or touch another mesh. Like if they're touching the table, their fingers will kind of glow. And if they're walking through a door, their bodies will kind of glow as they're walking through the door mesh. So, yeah, good old shaders.
Thanks for offering to help.
Oh yeah, no problem.
Well, I thought that...
Clive, may I come in?
Oh yes, come on in, love. So are you rounding Sol, then? That's tremendous. 8 months. Germ, I must leave now. Yeah, ring me again before the Resplendence leaves Earth space, won't you? Ta-ta. Sorry about that. An old friend from my carnival days.
Consorting with the enemy?
Worry not, mon capitaine. I am nothing if not discreet.
Are you gonna miss me, Clive? If VT kicks one of us off of this pinwheel.
Miss you? How could I? The next thing VT would receive after ending your contract would be my letter of resignation.
Oh, so you think I'm the one who's getting shit canned?
I mean, considering how indispensable I am, naturally.
Evie, can you get back to cargo?
On my way.
May I?
Yeah, come on.
So do you suppose there's good news?
That'd be nice for a change. What is it?
Hey, remember when we talked about how I needed access to Odin's direct interface?
Uh-huh.
So how about this? Tell VT if they don't grant access to Odin, they're gonna have to find themselves a new network specialist.
Oh my god. Nat, you're not even renewed yet.
You don't have access to Odin?
No. There's a whole part of the networking module I can't even get into.
People, everything on this station is VT's property. We're subcontractors. They get to decide what exactly we do and don't have access to. It's in all our paperwork. So if you want to quit, then just quit, but don't make me your go-between.
I mean, it is fair. How is she meant to do her job?
Clive.
Then again, rules are rules.
Nat, I'll think about it. But for now, how about you just get the rest of this job done while you still have it?
Aye, Captain.
Now, how about you just get the rest of this job done? All right, ladies, you have everything you need?
Yep-o. Thanks for offering to help.
Oh yeah, no problem. I mean, you know how much I love complete. Completely mindless busy work?
Kid, don't start. We don't even know if we're getting renewed yet.
We're getting renewed.
Okay, so if you're so sure, maybe we should just Do our jobs then? So we'll get renewed again next year?
God, next year. Nah. I'm gonna quit.
Stop.
What? They don't even give me access to the system I'm supposed to be maintaining. I mean, are you kidding me?
Well, do you really need direct access to Odin?
It's the principle of the thing. I mean, what if they were like, hey, Bert, your job's mechanical engineer, but, you know, don't touch anything under the hood?
Well, I'd still be pulling a paycheck for one thing.
Come on, you're a good engineer. You're totally gonna waste up here.
Well, didn't you say Evie was gonna talk to corporate about giving you more access?
Yeah, but it never went anywhere. Hey, that's a good point, actually.
What?
Evie, can you get back to cargo?
On my way. What are you doing?
Yeah, this'll work.
Nat! What is it?
Hey, remember when we talked about how I needed access to Odin's direct interface?
Uh-huh.
So how about this? Tell VT if they don't grant access to Odin, they're gonna have to find themselves a new network specialist.
Oh my god.
Nat, you're not even renewed yet.
You don't have access to it.
No. There's a whole part of the networking module I can't even get into.
People, everything on this station is VT's property. We're subcontractors. They get to decide what exactly we do and don't have access to. All our paperwork.
So transfer shafts. These are the thing you either just went in or are about to, which takes you from the hub to a wing, and it's kind of internal studio speak for the process the player is going through, the player character, where they grab onto a little sled inside of this long arm that goes from the hub all the way to the wing, and it takes them down there, drops them off, and it safely conveys them from 0G to gravity or the reverse.
And if you're going along the transfer shaft and thinking, "My, this is taking a long time," it's because we're loading stuff in the background.
Yes, and for that reason, it's actually the only part of the station. The 3 transfer shafts are actually the only parts of the station that are always loaded the whole time that you play. Another detail I really like is the way the boots light up whenever they magnetize, which you also see in the entryway. It was something that it took me a while to realize that was what was going on, but that's the kind of deep thinking about how things work that I really appreciate in the station overall. That's pretty cool.
They're like his little coded communiques.
Yeah.
Yeah.
People have tweeted like screenshots at us and called out these messages that kind of break into the player's AR interface sometimes, that are things like, it should be saying AR crew member record recovered, but then it says something like death sentence suddenly.
Which
and
is a
then,
surprise to some people.
Goes away again. Odin doesn't know what Amy's motives are. Like, as far as he knows, she's really there to take him back to Venturis and for him to be wiped. And so we wanted him to be trying to communicate with her and say, like, no, don't do this. And so for a while, I think we talked about, like, are we going to do this through, like, audio that cuts in or, like, some new interface thing that you see in different places? And then we had that realization that there are these kind of system messages, like when you're transferring into a wing or when you're recovering an AR scene, that he could subvert those via text that Amy's already seeing and just change what the meaning is, even if it's briefly. So yeah, I don't know how many people really are like conscious of these or how many make the connection, but I think hopefully by the end of the game you have that feeling, oh, that this was Odin all along.
Yeah, and there's a whole progression. You can see his feelings about Amy change as time goes on.
That's true. Yeah, it starts out him seeming kind of scared or panicking, and then I think by the end of the game he's starting to almost give her the benefit of the doubt or say, like, I don't have any choice but to trust you, basically.
It seems like he's starting to have a little bit of hope at the end, I think. But,
yeah. Sarah's panic attack also came late in the development of the game. I think it was actually the last, like, AR scene that got written. Botany had originally been a much shorter sequence, and we wanted to expand it to include more characterization between Evie and Clive in the tea garden, and to give Andrew more time with Odin to kind of talk through how he was really feeling after he and Sarah split off.
And commensurately.
Right, that left
That
this
left us with
space
time,
where we knew that we wanted Sarah to meet up with Evie and Clive at the end of the scene, so she couldn't just leave. But she had to go do something. And that led us to say, what's she doing in this time gap? And, Sarah has, I think, a lot of... she takes on a lot of that responsibility of having suppressed her own outward emotion to be, taking care of the crew. She's the doctor, but also she's trying to, like, hold this plan together, and she has people confiding in her that she's kind of holding all these things, inside. And we wanted to have this moment where it's just her and Odin and her being able to actually, like, externalize how hard this is for her and have Odin help her through that in this way that shows this isn't the first time that this happened. They have this kind of familiar ritual that they go through when Sarah needs help.
Yeah, I think that, like, personal emotional displays like this just feel a lot more engaging to us than, for example, characters screaming at each other because they've lost patience and stuff like that. I think that there's something about seeing what happens to a person when they're by themselves under stress, or I suppose with an AI.
Yeah.
But there's something there that is, it just feels like it rings true. 1, 2, 3.
That meat. It even sounded bad like vat meat.
That's because it is bad.
Ugh.
I mean, it's also good.
It's very good.
I mean...
Powerfully bad.
Obviously.
The way we were looking at it was, if you're on this long posting, then like fresh food would be one of the most desirable things that you could have. And so they have the tomatoes and the squash and the mushrooms, and then also in our fiction, what we speculate is that the vast majority of all meat that would be eaten on Earth is produced in a lab, not in a factory farm, because that's become much more efficient than producing animals. And so also they can use that process on the space station, so they can produce meat protein right on site and turn it into whatever meals they want.
Why not? Why not vat meat?
They also make terrible noises. Whenever you go near these things, they do a lot of squooshing and squanching.
Thanks to Patrick.
Which, thank you, Patrick, for making our vat meat grosser than necessary.
Oh, it's necessary.
Exactly as gross as necessary.
Precisely. Vat meat.
It's good.
Sure it is.
We were really grateful to have some friends in the industry and artists that we know contribute some cool pieces of art to the game. For instance, the pinup poster in Bert's locker in the locker room was by Mariel Cartwright, who was the lead animator on Skullgirls and is the art director of the game Indivisible. And then very nearby to that, there's the cover of the Zero Spiel ebook on Sarah's desktop, which is like a multi-layered reference because in Firewatch they were kind enough to put one of the books from Gone Home findable in their game. Ollie Moss, who was Firewatch's art director and did the book covers for the 1 through 10 books for that game, did a really cool kind of visual pun roulette wheel space station book cover for Zero Spiel in Tacoma. Also, some of us did drawings for the game.
Our programmer Hannah did programmer art for Nat. She ghost drew Nat's doodles.
Right.
And
drew those very good Tyrannosauruses.
Yep.
And in Nat's office, you can find a bunch of post-it notes on her desk that are just different little doodles of Odin. And we actually assigned Hannah to just draw doodles of Odin over the course of a few months while she was at her desk waiting for builds to finish or whatever. And then one day she just handed us a bunch of sticky notes and was like, here they are. And now they're on Nat's desk. Carla did all of Andrew's drawings.
Yes.
So his sketches from life of flowers and
his orchids
statues and stuff.
And stuff like that. And also Nicholas's doofy drawing of Andrew floating in space and yelling at him about homework.
Right. And then I did Bert's drawing of Nat that you find next to Bert's workstation. So yeah, we have this thing where we have different individual people play different characters through their handwriting, and sometimes we have them play different characters through their drawings.
So Carla hooked us up with a botanist, and we chatted about what plants would be good to grow in a space station.
Yes.
And she was like, well, this is the sort of lighting conditions that would be good for plants, and if you're looking for something highly protein-based, then you should grow some amaranth, and, she suggested all these plants that would be good in, like, low-level lighting, etc. And then I put a bunch of squash in there and tomatoes and stuff that wasn't at all what she suggested.
Well,
And so-
the other thing though is that like we have the grow lights for them.
Yeah.
Like they don't need to grow in natural, space station light. And we also totally did take their advice with the just oxygen producers, like the snake plants
Yeah.
and everything. Those are legit, real life NASA choices.
Yes. They filtered formaldehyde.
The other thing is that our station didn't have to actually run on just plants,
Yeah. If you know what the rules are, then you can break them all over the place, I suppose. Or decide to
That is
throw them
true.
out the window.
So the tea garden at the end of the long hall here in Botany, if you go there, it's one of the few places in the station where it's almost entirely window. Hopefully some people caught it. There's a small and completely serendipitous result, which is when you're actually looking out here and you wait for the other wings to come around, you can see the burst oxygen tanks that are a central plot point. And in fact, you can see those from any place in the game. If you look out the window, they're there from the very first second of the game. But it was just kind of an accident. We built this whole wing, and we were deciding how to align the station in respect to how the wing was lined up. And I did this accidentally and put this right here because I really wanted to look out onto the solar panels of the station. And then I just saw the tanks kind of drift by slowly. So it was pretty cool.
There's a few different specific callbacks to our last game, Gone Home, in Tacoma. We are pretty directly implying that they take place in the same universe because there's a gardening book written by Sam's mom from Gone Home that you can also find here in the Botany Wing.
Yeah.
So some of them are pretty direct. But this one that we're near right now,
That's pretty direct also.
it's fairly direct. But it's not like the same object. It's just a mug that says jazz
You think
on
people
it.
have jazz mugs in real life?
Well, a lot of people do now. They bought them from Topatico.com.
Son of a gun.
We made it happen. We ruined people's kitchens.
It's true.
But
we don't have this for merchandise.
No.
Don't get excited about that.
As far as direct Gone Home callbacks go, there's the Janice Greenbrier book, there's the jazz mug, and then there's the Christmas duck that you find in the empty storage bunk in the network technology module
And it
later
lights
in the game.
up.
That's true. And
Unlike
it plays
Jan's
a little
book.
song for you. Yeah.
Or the jazz mug.
True. Nothing else
Honestly.
lights up and plays you a little song.
What a ripoff.
The AR game in Andrew's bunk is called Spitfire Returns, which is implied to be a sequel to Super Spitfire that you found in Gone Home, which is the
Itself.
Super Nintendo
Yeah.
version of the kind of vector graphics Spitfire game that is playable in Minerva's Den for BioShock 2. So that's the one thing that actually in a lot of ways carries through the most directly from all three of those titles. The basketball Easter egg, I guess, is something that
God.
we took from System Shock 2 as an homage in Gone Home and then carried forward into Tacoma as well.
We didn't put it in Minerva's Den.
Yeah, there's no basketballs.
We did a bad job. Should have made one.
Sorry, everybody.
You're not sorry.
I know.
What do you say, folks? Yay or nay?
Obviously, we're on board.
I'm in.
Me too.
Okay.
All right. Well, we non-essential personnel need to figure out how to do everything we can to set this mission up for success, then get the hell out of your way as quickly as possible. Time is oxygen, people. Break.
I can't believe everybody went along with this.
I'll head downstairs and
I
get
didn't
started
expect them to either.
Oh my god.
Okay.
So now we actually have to build this thing.
Andrew.
Clive. Want to talk?
Sure, Evie.
Are you okay?
Evie! Hey, Evie. Hey, I know you're all like gung-ho to help us out and everything, but I did the math. If we could get this done in like 48 hours, not 72...
Could the rest of us wait longer to go in?
Exactly.
Listen, ladies, I get it. You're trying to do right by us, but every minute we wait to go in is a minute you don't have to get this thing flying. And knowing what we know about VT, we've got to give you every chance we can to succeed.
So there's no way we can convince you?
We made a plan. Now we just need to hold up our end of the bargain.
Then I guess we should stop wasting time and get to work.
This is gonna be good, Evie. You just wait. Ride of your life.
In more ways than one.
I didn't think things would end like this. Did you?
What do you mean, end?
Come on, Clive.
What?
You really think they can turn that thing into a passenger vehicle in 2 days? We might as well hold our breath and just try dog paddling over there.
But...
Listen, it's okay. We know it's not safe working up here. We just don't think about it a lot, but here we are. And we knew it all along.
But VT could...
VT's not fucking coming, Clive! VT's not fucking coming. You think sending a crew up here at the drop of a hat just to check on things is worth it to them? Dollars and cents, Clive. You know what one of those fuckers said to me one time? If it doesn't make dollars, it doesn't make sense. Them sending a crew up in time, it just doesn't make sense.
So you're just giving up then?
No. We're doing what we said we'd do. Bert and Nat, they are our only shot and we have got to take it. But I can also be realistic that...
Evie, I don't want to be realistic with you.
Well, time to go make final preparations then.
But not too finally. You know, I'm picturing it. The day we'll be walking together. Like this. The gravity, it won't be artificial. I mean, isn't it strange? We've never felt the Earth's pull together. One day.
One day.
I think so. Oh, Evie. Do you think you could get everyone to medical? I want to make sure they've got the best shot at waking back up once they do go in.
All right. How about this? Let's give folks a little time to regroup. But why don't Clive and I follow you over there right now? Get ours done. No time like the present.
Lead the way.
Get this thing flying. And knowing what we know about V...
Stop with one. Okay, where do we start?
Start? I got things started as soon as this all went down. I'll show you what I got lined up. To the workshops!
Okay, Odin. Ready? I'm gonna do it this time.
So the propulsion suits are never actually called out in the lore of the game, but the idea behind them is that each crew member has a couple of them in their bunks, and that they're used to sort of traverse the central hub, which is a microgravity environment, unlike the rest of the station. So they have little air jets placed in the fabric of strategic areas, kind of on the arms, the hips, and the legs. And there's little jets that the user move in kind of a controlled way through this giant space. And it also lets us make like a uniform for the Tacoma station that we can kind of personalize with like a name tag for each crew member. I did a little concept for them. It's just the idea behind them was sort of like a space coverall, something not too glamorous, but it's fun. I got to use ZBrush, which is a sort of like a clay sculpting program, and sort of snuck them in everyone's closet.
So a lot of Tacoma's character dynamics are about trust and who trusts who with what, in what context, all those sorts of things. I think we see a lot of that in the botany module specifically. We see, Evie telling the crew, here's our plan and it's going to work, and then when she's in private with Clive saying, this plan isn't going to work, like, what are you thinking? And then I think that you can kind of contrast how both Andrew and Sarah trust and confide in Odin, but Sarah confides in Odin as, like, a personality, and Andrew confides in Odin with, like, his real worries, right, and saying, what I've said is we should just trust the company and do what they say, and then as soon as I'm alone in a room with Odin, I'm saying, how likely is it really that they're going to come pick us up? How sure should I be about this, even though I'm acting totally sure in front of everybody else?
Yeah, and Andrew doesn't quite treat Odin like a person.
Right.
But, like, yeah, he's at least confident in Odin's ability to not spill his information.
Right. He trusts Odin as a source of information.
Right.
And as, this
as an
thing.
analyst,
This thing that he can acknowledge his own uncertainty in front of, in a way that he wouldn't in front of a human.
Right,
in
like
this situation.
That sort of like, your pet doesn't care if you're wearing pants kind of thing.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's that.
True.
Andrew doesn't wear his pants in front of Odin. The end.
Andrew isn't wearing pants the entire game.
And you didn't know it.
How could you?
Everybody was cool with it.
Okay, Odin. Ready? I'm gonna do it this time.
Then gotta do everything we can to set this mission up for then get that possible.
I'll
Everybody went along with this.
I'll head downstairs and get started on something.
God. Hey, Andrew. Andrew.
Yeah, sure.
Hey, are you okay?
Evie!
Nope, I'm not.
Okay. Okay.
Nope, I'm not.
Okay. Okay. Okay.
Evie!
Nope, I'm not. I'm not.
Okay.
Nope, I'm not.
Okay.
Nope, I'm not.
This is one of 3 places in the game where you can decipher a code for a key code door by observing one of the characters in the AR scene actually inputting it.
We didn't initially have that as like a mechanical concept.
That's right. That is something that we had initially only had like go find the code somewhere and bring it back, but we saw playtesters like watching when the characters would go through the door and looking at the key code, input pad and being like, oh, I was really hoping I could just figure it out from watching them. So we were like, we can do that.
And we did it.
Yeah. So, that was the point where we were like, we don't want to cut the other ways to get the code that are in the game. We want there to be multiple ways to do it. Because I think there's this feeling of, even if you get every code by just watching the character put it in, but then later you see that code somewhere else and you're like, oh, I could have gotten it this way. That's a cool feeling for the player to know that there was more than one way that they could have solved that problem. They see evidence of it, and kind of the way they got through it was up to how they were playing. Yeah.
What do you want to talk about?
I can't do it. I can't. This is all crazy.
But you said you...
I know. Okay, I know what I said. But what was I supposed to say? You all pressured me.
Andrew.
They really expect us to climb into some jury-rigged thing and ride it through space? Just because VT might not come pick us up. It's insane. And first we all have to get in cryo just for the privilege... Well, some of us do.
Andrew, I don't know what to say. Burton Nat need us. They need you.
Well, I'm not doing it. I'm not getting in cryo. I'm gonna be the same one here. Nobody even considered that VT might come pick us up in time if we just wait. Nobody even considered it.
Listen, just... don't talk to anybody else about this for now, okay? And if I were to call the crew into medical, you'd show up, right?
I guess it depends what it is.
Okay. Just... give me a little time.
So in Tacoma, one of the interesting things we got to do with the scenes is have characters interact with the world, but the world is in a different state than it was when the characters were interacting with it. So the difference between the world that you're looking at and the world that the characters were inhabiting is hopefully visible via their actions, but not in any other way.
Right.
Yeah, here in the irrigation room, there's a good example of this where if you're watching Andrew when he's talking to Sarah, there's one point where he is walking across the room and it looks like he's holding something and it happens to be the hose that's on the ground. And you'll see the characters at the beginning walking through the hose. And then later in the scene, once he had hooked up the hose across the room, you'll see the characters step over it. So that's kind of a good example of showing both states.
Yeah, there's some other places where you only see the aftermath. Like in medical, the storage room is all messed up and the shelves are knocked down, and that's what happens at the very end of the scene. But yeah, in irrigation here, you actually get to see the before and the after and the during kind of all in one place.
Yeah, the only other one I can think of is the drone, which when it explodes, it gets tilted on its stand, and so everyone's interacting with it in slightly the wrong place.
Right, and Bert is climbing up a ladder that has
been knocked
onto
over
the floor and stuff like
and
that.
Using controls that are touching things that are now covered by what's that stuff called?
Foam.
Yeah.
Good commentary.
Just say foam again like that.
Oh, foam.
This weird little stone is Andrew's shaping stone that he's been working on. Stone shaping is a sort of meditative practice that we made up.
True.
That you're supposed to basically just take some kind of like relatively soft stone in a vaguely spherical chunk and just like rub it with your hands, like so that it slowly is worn down into a smooth shape.
Yeah. Andrew's family kind of brought this meditative practice with them, and then he is carrying it on and lived it and practiced it in his own life.
And that's concretized by the fact that 2 of the stones up in his office belonged to his grandmother, and that she had actually worked on them for her entire life. Also, we have Andrew's cigarettes here because he's a secret smoker, much like Nat, and smoking like normal cigarettes would be an incredibly terrible idea in a space station. Like, you don't want to have an open flame anywhere on a space station where you rely on oxygen to, be there. So we thought smoking was expressive enough that we wanted to have cigarettes anyway. And so we made up a variety of cigarettes that did not actually flame, but
they are self-vaporizing, effectively. Right. So I think what we posited was that they had microscopic electric filaments in them, and then when you drew on them with your breath, it would activate those filaments and vaporize part of the cigarette, and that's what you're smoking.
So they heat, but they don't they never cause it to actually catch fire.
Hey, Odin.
Yes, Andrew?
What should I do?
What do you mean?
I don't know. I just want to go home.
I understand.
Do you?
I believe that I do.
Can you tell me the average time it's taken VT to send an evac crew to investigate situations like this?
The average time between a remote facility losing ground contact and an investigative crew arriving on site is 98.4 hours.
God damn it.
Please try not to be worried, Andrew.
That's easy for you to say. You don't have lungs. So, what do you think we should do?
Standard operating procedure requires all crew to engage cryogenic hibernation until help arrives.
Yeah, people die in cryo, right?
I know. Sometimes.
If we don't make it out of this, can you deliver a message to my family?
I will do everything in my power.
Okay. I'll send you something later, all right?
Of course.
Well, looks like this'll work. Give us a few extra hours anyway. Thanks, Odin. Hello? Guess I'll catch up with you all later then.
Close your eyes.
I did already.
A light wind rustles the green tall grass. Your skirt billows gently. Warm sun caresses your back.
Yes.
You begin walking forward. The grass is cool. Your feet parted with each step. Do you see what is in front of you?
As I step through the grass, I naturally come upon a path.
Yes.
The dirt of the path is soft on the soles of my feet. I don't know what's going to happen to us, Odin.
Sarah.
I am striding forward confidently upon my appointed path. Wherever it takes me is where I am meant to be. I am striding confidently on my appointed path.
Sarah?
Yes, Odin?
Are you going to be all right?
I think so. Oh, Evie. Do you think you could get everyone to medical? I want to make sure they've got the best shot at waking back up once they do go in. Okay, Sarah. We'll see you over in Mac. Soon as everything's wrapped up here.
All right. Good speed. Once more into the breach. What?
I don't know. I'm just thinking about how Evie and Clive are already in deep freeze. Did you read them?
So this is medical. So it has facilities like exam room, but it also has, kind of storage for med supplies and any device that would be needed to check in on people medically. Very early on, the design of this space came from the story as it was at the time. So the story was written where Sarah and Andrew went through kind of a dramatic arc here, and that dramatic arc had moments, and those moments built so that the place was designed around making those moments happen in a very specific order. So what happened is we did that. We made a space where you're watching the AR scene and Sarah goes off into a room, but the room is locked, and you can't get through the locked door until you go watch another part of the scene and get a key to unlock it. And to build that and to make them walk a certain way and go off in a certain area, building the space to the AR scene ended up with this very awkward space. So we ended up scrapping that, but it did take trying it to go, let's design a space to the AR scene, and where we ended up was much more functional to the purpose of the wing and who would work there and who would live there and how would they live and how would they work.
And I really like that sort of a neat outcome of having the AR scene blocked out in a space that already existed specifically in this wing in medical, is that you have moments like sort of later in the scene when Nat and Bert are, having their little like flirtatious moment where Nat jumps onto Bert. She sort of like tackle hugs her. Mm-hmm. There's this interesting outcome where that happens in one room, and then it just so happens that Sarah's office is literally on the other side of the wall. So if you stand in Sarah's office and are standing sort of next to Sarah when Nat tackle hugs Bert, you can hear that through the wall. And Sarah and Andrew actually do react to that in the scene. And I thought that's like kind of a fun outcome. Like, we didn't plan that. That's just kind of how the AR scene ended up playing out based on how the space is laid out.
Message they sent?
Yeah. Why are we going into the supply closet?
I got to talk to them a little bit right before Sarah took them down to cryo, and Evie was being so encouraging. They're putting all their faith in us, but...
But what?
Right before they turned to go, just for a second, they look so worried.
Oh, baby.
The clock is ticking, and I just keep thinking, what if the last time they saw each other is the last time they'll ever see each other?
Don't think about that.
How can I? How can you not think about it?
So, you know the concept of partitioning from early century computing?
Yeah, I think so.
So, you have a data drive. Maybe one partition was your operating system, and the other one was like general data storage. And maybe you'd partition part of the drive off to contain something that might be unstable or that you otherwise kind of, wanted not to interfere with anything else. There are certain things that are gonna help us get this done, but some things, they need to be partitioned off. Because thinking about them isn't gonna help us.
But you're thinking about us, at least, aren't you?
Yeah. And when I do let myself start thinking about how there's a possibility this is the last of our time together too,
Nat?
then I start thinking we should really make the most of it.
So this is one question I have, because I don't remember how we got to
Really?
it, but there was a lot of iteration on the design of the AR desktops, but what we settled on was kind of the horseshoe icons, which
You mean
I
the
think
horseshoe bat?
I think came from you. That horseshoe bat.
Yeah. Well, we started out with the earliest versions of it being a grid of screens almost that would pop up in front of the player's vision.
That felt kind of disorganized, so we brought things in for a short time to make it kind of like a taskbar at the bottom, which I think a lot of people are used to, which is why we went that way. It's a lot of phones, a lot of desktops use that.
And also that also wasn't using the player's visual field, really. It was just still behaving like a flat computer screen. And so, we did the strange decision of sort of bending it into a horseshoe shape so that it could surround the center of the player, or I guess character's visual field.
Instead of having it function like an actual phone where you have to look at it, the AR desktop takes advantage of the fact that it's actually in the world in front of you. You're not holding anything. You don't have to look down at an object. It can just be in your peripheral vision and you can look from side to side at it.
It is partially a realistic usage scenario and partially also so that the player could actually see the world while looking at it. And yes, it makes a horseshoe bat. So this book here is actually written by an AI, one of the major Venturis AIs, called Fand, who's in charge of Cure Body City State. Fand is really the only other positive, successful seeming AI that acts the most human in our fiction. She's written this book here about how she came to, reorganize her domain.
But it's also kind of like a philosophical book about mindfulness, which I think is a really interesting aspect of consciousness for an AI to be thinking about and to become an authority on. This book was something that Carla put together. We had agreed that we were like, we should have a book that was written by an AI to show more of what different AIs are in our world, so it doesn't just seem like it's Odin.
Yeah.
And then I guess there's other AIs, but to actually have some examples. And so, this was Carla's version of, what is an interesting additional perspective for an AI to represent. And I thought this almost enlightened Buddhist seeming perspective that this AI presumably has developed over years and years of observation and kind of examining its own ways of working and how people relate to each other and stuff, felt like a legitimate thing that could happen with the concept of AI, but definitely not something that we had seen anywhere else within our fictional world. Sarah ends up being kind of the Ellen Ripley character of the game, but she didn't start as that character when we were writing the game. We really started from who the characters were and what their roles were, and then fit them into a plot. And I think that as we were going along, by getting to know Sarah, we realized that she made the most sense to be the person who would, in a way, kind of like team up with Odin to pull off this plan in the end.
Yeah, no one else's relationship with Odin is really as personal at all. Like, even Nat, whose job it is to work with him, you know, she treats him as a project a little bit, you know, and or a pet, and it's just not
or a problem
quite
to
the
solve
same.
or a system. It was interesting for us to get a feel for Sarah and kind of realize she has a kind of like boldness to her and a determination to her, even if she also has these internal struggles with like anxiety and everything. And we discovered that she's the kind of person that if she was put into this kind of like high pressure do or die situation, she would just do her best to do it, you know. She would kind of rise to that occasion, and she ends up being the only person that can do that. And I think we get to see how she follows through.
So, about the visual design, I feel like a lot of the design came from, you know, the art side.
Yeah. Well, Rebecca Mock gave us the concept art. Rebecca's a great concept artist, and she does comics as well, and does illustrations for editorial work. The exterior of the station was one of her designs, and basically I was very lucky because I just got to look at her work and try and replicate it, or translate it, you know, in so much as, you know, she's used to drawing in a 2D way, and I have to translate that into this crazy 3D model. But yeah, it was definitely the biggest model I worked with, and probably the most. I came back to it for the most revisions over the course of about a year or so, and yeah, no, it's a big one. At the end, I was like, okay, you know, it's a little overwhelming, but you know, seeing it now moving and whatnot, and all hooked up, it's pretty cool.
All right, good speed.
Oh, Odin, did I do the right thing?
In what regard? I believe that you have made a decision. Regard.
Oh, Odin, did I do the right thing?
In what regard?
Does Nat deserve to know what her odds are if she ends up going into cryo?
I believe that you have made a decision with both Roberta and Natalie's best interests at heart.
Above all, do no harm. If we do make it out of this thing, Nat's going to have to find out I didn't tell her everything at some point.
I believe that is a bridge to be crossed at a later date. Andrew is here for his exam.
Oh, send him in. So you showed up for your exam?
I did.
So does that mean you've decided to...
What's gonna happen to us, Sarah?
What? Well, Bert and Nat are going to fix up the drone with life support, and then we're...
No. I mean... What if things don't work out? And we're still stuck in cryo?
Oh. Well, when you go into stabilizing sleep, it feels just like any other sleep, really. The body effectively goes into a controlled hypothermic coma.
Do you dream?
Sometimes. Sometimes very intense dreams.
And then what?
After a certain amount of time, your body slows down too much, things start shutting down. Don't wake back up.
It doesn't hurt.
No.
Do you think Bert and Nat can get it done?
I do.
Then I'll just have to trust your professional opinion and do my part. It's been good working with you, Doc. I'm ready for my exam.
When you look at a character's collection of books, like when you look at Sarah's books here in her office, I think that we tried to reinforce some of the themes or some of the characters' main concerns or interests or anxieties through what they had on their bookshelves. So with Sarah, you know, she's a doctor, so she has health and nutrition and you know, doctor stuff, but she also is a reader and a thoughtful person, so she has fiction and poetry, and she also has a lot of anxiety, so there's sort of both meditation and books specifically about dealing with anxiety, and she also comes from a Muslim background, and I think through the books you get the idea that she looks at her faith from almost like an academic perspective or an analytical perspective, and I think you can tell that almost exclusively through looking at what kinds of books she keeps in her personal spaces.
Additionally, we got to project some of our own likes and dislikes onto the characters, because, you know, in order to fill out someone's library, it's pretty hard to keep everything completely on topic.
Right.
Yeah, I believe Nina requested the William Carlos Williams book, and a couple others here and there.
We have Alice Munro and
Margaret Atwood.
And Margaret Atwood.
And Deepness in the Sky is one of my favorites.
Tacoma Station went through this big overhaul partway through development. And the first version of the station was this microgravity station where everything floated, everything, you know, there was no gravity whatsoever. And so it was designed as such. It was designed like the ISS so that objects like pissants in the toilets were to be used in microgravity. So, you know, when a user was, or a crew member was, you know, using them, they wouldn't spray water all over the place. They wouldn't float away when they were trying to actually like use the toilet, it would be an actual concern. And so they do look a little strange. They're kind of legacy objects in the grand scheme of things, in that they are some of the earliest models in the game. And the medical bed is another. Originally, it used to have little foot braces, and it still has the straps of back in the day when one of the first rooms we actually made in the old station was the doctor's room, Sarah's room. And so we added those details so that a patient wouldn't float away. So the straps are still there, and actually the toilet's got a reskin. But why we still kept those models in the game is just because, you know, when you're doing small independent development, there's only so much bandwidth that you have, and the time it takes to actually redoing the entire model is not insubstantial, especially when there's only one or two full-time modelers on the crew. So we reskinned them and we kept them, and it's one of those things where you got to pick your battles. And surely, I mean, I kind of like them, so it's I'm not too worried about it.
Unlike in a lot of popular fiction, our version of cryogenic stasis is not something you can do long term. It's not like in Alien where you just kind of are out for a few years and wake up in some star system. It's much more unstable and short term than that.
Yeah. You're in cryo so that you can get to surgery, but not so that you can just be preserved for an indefinite amount of time. Yeah. What we're seeing in the crew medical charts that are here in the exam room is the idea that most people in the situation of the crew is in, if they had to go into cryo for, a couple or a few days, they would probably be fine. But part of that, in the case of the crew of Tacoma, is that most people in developed countries in our fiction get a selection of gene filtering procedures done to them, like in utero. And it's sort of along the lines of people getting vaccines now, but it's being able to tweak people's genes to make them not be susceptible to certain congenital illnesses or other conditions. But when you look at these charts, it turns out that Nat never had any gene filtering done, and so because of her condition, it makes it much, much more dangerous for her as an individual.
Yeah, I think we figured out that mitral stenosis would be a particularly dangerous condition to have if you were going to be basically hypothermic for long periods of time. That's actually like a real danger, so...
You as a player might notice a few different references to Tina in the game. There's the screaming Tina that you might see on the specialty cocktails board in the kitchen, which you then may later discover refers to the skeleton here in Med, that you can put the skull back on the skeleton and then put the hat on the skull, and the hat is labeled Tina, which means the skeleton's name is Tina. But all of this Tina nonsense is a reference to our next door office mate. The office that we made Tacoma in is in an old building with thin walls. And there was a company next door to ours that we would hear this woman screaming through the wall with some frequency, either because she was so angry or so amused by things.
Just shrieking, like, most of the time.
A lot of the time. Tina was very energetic.
Yeah.
So to be clear, her name wasn't Tina.
No. Steve just made it up at one point.
We were like, we always hear this woman screaming through the wall of our office. We have to be able to refer to her as something.
Rather than like go over and introduce ourselves and like ask her what her name was, we were like, well, we'll just name this phenomenon Tina.
And part of that is because there were two women that worked in the office next door to ours. And so since we only ever heard the screaming through the wall, we didn't know who in the office it actually was. And so for years, we were conjecturing about which of the women in that office was Tina. And then they moved out, like shortly before the end of the development of Tacoma. And one day, soon before they moved out, I heard Tina's voice screaming and saying, "Oh my fucking god!" over on one side of the office. And then Tina, on the other side of the office, respond with, "Are you fucking kidding me?" And I realized it was both of them, and they both screamed like that all the time, and that's why we heard so much screaming over there.
So they had a corporate culture of screaming.
So we wanted to pay homage to Tina in the game. We figured a screaming skeleton was probably a good way to do that. Thanks, Tina.
I believe that is a bridge to be crossed at a later date.
Oh, Odin.
Odin, is Sarah ready for me?
I will tell her that you are here. There's a bridge.
Send them in. So you showed up for your exam?
I did.
At Venturis, we look boldly into the future, not backward.
So with regards to art direction, when we originally conceived of the station, we were talking about wall colors for each of the wings, and we wanted each wing to be the color of the crew member who lived in it. So, Evie's is purple, so originally the kitchen was as a nice purple color, and the wing you're standing in now in engineering would be orange to match Bert, etc. But 6 colors is a lot of colors, and so in the interest of simplicity, we chose just one central color for each of the 3 wings, and they're not particularly tied to any character. They're just, nice to look at or evoked a nice feeling. So green for personnel, blue for biomed, and an industrial-ish orange for engineering. Paring things down or opting for simplicity is something that I, as an art person, I found I rarely regret, and especially as it pertains to player flow. The idea of having 6 different colors, I could see how that would get confusing after a while, and so we sort of opted to go the way that we did, and I think that it really helps with regards to landmarking. You realize you're in the same wing, and then you'll traverse to a different wing, and it's a different color, and you're in a different area. So I'm glad that we sort of simplified things the way we did.
The reason we made the sync device functionality be so obscured to the player was because early in development we were having trouble with progression systems and keys and locks, and people getting too focused in on locks that we were setting up in the game and sort of ignoring the story to find passwords and stuff. So the sync device was sort of a solution for us to have a gating system, but one that the player didn't feel like they needed to spend all their time paying attention to, because the idea is that it's almost like a USB stick where you're downloading stuff, and that's the kind of thing that just takes time and that you don't have to pay attention to, and people generally know that who use computers know that kind of paradigm. So that was sort of the original idea for why the sync device is sort of this obscure thing that's just downloading away. Why we're not having you have to keep track of every single little thing you're doing and how it affects the percentage. It doesn't really matter. It's just about you exploring space and not having to worry about it.
The hope is that you stand in front of it and you plug the sync device in and you watch it tick slowly to 0.1 and then you're like, oh well,
yeah,
no, I'm gonna go look at other stuff.
yeah, exactly. We're in mechanical engineering, which is Bert's zone. One of the big considerations when we were working on designing each level in Tacoma, each wing, was how does the player sort of encounter each room and in what order? For example, we have most of the bunks be kind of tucked away in the back of each wing, usually with sort of an entryway or a longer hallway that kind of separates it from the main working areas.
We did a lot of tricks. For a time, there was even kind of this idea of an airlock where there were 2 doors that you had to go through to get to everybody's bedroom. And then you can see in the back, there's an example of an elevation change. We tried as much to make them feel like they were lower or higher than the rest of the space. So you kind of had to go upstairs to get to the bedroom.
And that was so that, we could have these working spaces where we would imagine Bert would come out and do her mechanical engineering work during the day, and then going home for her, she at least has this sort of separation of work and personal space and not just be living in your office.
Right.
So yeah, each wing is sort of designed to have the working spaces be accessible in an order that makes sense, and to have the bunks in the back to give characters a sense of personal space.
So the bounce lighting is specifically referring to the idea that when the sun comes through in some spaces and hits certain surfaces, we try to make it look like the whole room changes temperature and sometimes warms up. Most rooms that have a large pool of sunlight that moves through actually has a floating point light that's just sitting there. And that point light is one color, and it is on a timer that is linked to the angle of the sun. And when the angle of the sun hits X or Y, it warms up or cools down. And for me, and I don't know if this hit you as well, but it made it feel a lot like a plane. For me, when I'm in a plane and the plane banks or the sun setting or something has changed in the plane and the light starts coming through in a different way and you see it go across the ceiling and then the the room temperature changes and it becomes, a little golden and a little orange, and it's just this. You can be, watching a movie in the back of a seat at a plane, and then suddenly you're like, oh, I'm flying through the air.
Yeah, I think it's lovely. I think it's a really nice effect.
You coming, Sarah? I'll catch up with you. Okay.
Earlier, when you decided to withhold it.
You coming, Sarah? You coming, Sarah?
Something that players with a keen eye for game development history might notice when they're playing Tacoma is the presence of a character named Roberta Williams. That's Bert's full name. And people have asked, is that a reference to Roberta Williams, the creator of King's Quest and co-founder of Sierra Online? And the answer is yeah, of course it is. I tend to enjoy when occasionally in fiction there's a fictional character that quote unquote just happens to have the same name as a real world historical figure or famous person or whatever, Sheriff Harry S. Truman in Twin Peaks or something like that. And so I kind of wanted to do that. And also, Roberta Williams as a figure in the industry was a really influential person in both her work as a game designer and writer, and one of the very, very first originators of the graphical adventure game with the King's Quest series. And so anyway, we see, I think, what we do with games like Tacoma as kind of having one foot in traditional adventure games and one foot in immersive sim influenced, games that come from the Looking Glass tradition of games like Thief and System Shock. Being able to put, a little bit of an homage and a tip of the hat to Roberta Williams in the game and kind of acknowledge, I think, the reverberations that her work have had even on, stuff that we're doing now was a cool opportunity to have. In Tacoma, one of the things that we wanted to acknowledge was to have some evidence of how geopolitical changes had happened over time. And so, when you look at, for instance, the flags over Bert's workstation, or when you look at the crew IDs that you can find all throughout the station, the parts of the world that people hail from are not one-to-one with countries or city-states or nation-states necessarily that exist in those forms today. We, I think, only know as much about our fictional universe as we need to, which in many cases is more than we put into the game and more than a player could know just from playing it, but it's also only as much as we need to know.
Because we only know where the story touches.
We know enough to know what we can refer back to in the text.
Right.
I think that we know that the DEC exists because we knew that Andrew was from New York, and we needed a region name for where New York is now. But we don't have a ton of knowledge about what's going on in parts of the world that the game doesn't touch. But hopefully there's still enough of territory surrounding what you actually see in the game that the player kind of gets glimpses of, that you get a feeling of sort of cohesive external
richness.
world.
Yeah.
I like Nat and Bert's bunk. We tried to make each bunk feel very different from the rest. They all have a different footprint. They all have a different, color and aesthetic to them, as best as we could do. But I think that Nat and Bert's bunk might be one of the more successful. They have sort of a high number of unique assets, like the weird floppy gel animal. They have the mouth guard, and mouth guard is directly modeled on my own mouth guard. I was holding it in my hand as I sculpted it, so in a way, those are my teeth in the game. They also have the sex toys. There's the vibrator and the rope. Just the mural on the wall is kind of interesting. So I think, it's one of the more interesting bunks to visit. Nat and Bert's bunk, I give it 5 stars.
We are going to talk about filled animals, which there is one of in Tacoma.
And it's like a stuffed animal, but filled with gel?
Right, yeah, it's stuffed with gel.
It's filled, even.
It's filled and stuffed simultaneously.
It's gross. Well, I just know that they weren't going to make it for a long, long time. Like, they just weren't in the game. And finally, they came in hot, like, at the very end. Like, we were like, well, we have the model. Like, I'd modeled it at some point, and Noelle had rigged it.
Because of all the joints and the wiggliness of the legs, I think it was an interesting time to try to make it behave in a way that was the appropriate amount of terrible.
So yeah, I guess filled animals happened because of our love for plushies and just being jokesters. I think many things in Tacoma came from office jokes and then became serious.
Serious in quotes.
Bert, in fact, is engaged with decorating their room in the AR fragment that's here. It's kind of an externalization of Bert's desire for something else. Bert's desire to kind of branch off from what she's been trained to do as a mechanical engineer and be able to kind of follow her passion of doing art and being an artist.
Yeah. Or at the very least, her interest. But yeah,
right.
It's not really encouraged by Venturas.
Right. But the painting that she's doing is a painting called Luna that I think is from like sort of the 19th century kind of like pre-Raphaelite school. And we thought it was on theme, being like a lady on a moon.
Yeah,
that's cute. Bert is very sweet, but her idea was a little on the nose, but that's okay.
I mean, Clive's music is a little on the nose. It's fine.
It's true. We can blame our characters on how corny we are.
That's exactly what we should do. Yes, you're right.
All right.
Nah, I'm good. I'm hooked in. Gonna test the connection.
Okay, great. This'll only take a minute.
Power cell showing green. How's yours look, baby?
Voltage adapter in place. Ready to rock.
Hit it.
Oh my god. Are you okay? Can you feel your feet and hands?
Ew! Ow. My hip just hurts.
Bert? Bert! 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 1, 2, 3. Bert, can you hear me? 1, 2, 3. Did it work?
What will you do now? Then tell me what you are going to do.
Oh my god, Odin. Bert and Nat are injured. The drone is fucked. I'm going to give them a little time to get over the shock, but then we're going into cryo.
Sarah, please listen carefully. I am not telling you what to do, but I am mentioning that there is a door in the network technology module that is normally inaccessible to the crew, and it is true that you could, before proceeding to cryo, investigate that door.
What are you telling me here, Odin?
I have told you all that I can. Simple facts, nothing more.
Oh my god, Odin. Are my patients stable?
Yes,
Their conditions won't degrade if I leave them here.
they should not.
There's some door in networking that we can't normally get into?
Yeah, it's Odin's hardware compartment, but we're not allowed direct access. Why?
Where is it?
What have you got on your mind, Doc?
Please, I'm sorry. Look, that fire just burned up a lot of our time.
Here. It's here. In networking. You'll have to go through the maintenance shaft to get there. Here's the technical access code.
Okay. You don't let her go to sleep. And you don't let her move.
Sarah, what's going on?
I wish I knew. I'm gonna go find out.
There's this scene in the drone bay between Nat and Bert where the two of them are in this terrible accident together and they're both injured. And this is something where, you know, when we arrived at this being one of the scenes in the game, I kind of naturally had to draw from an experience I had where my wife and I were in a motorbike accident. And, you know, that was a really traumatic, scary experience for me. Yeah, I think probably the hardest part of that to relive or draw from is, you know, there's the part in that scene where Bert is thrown off the ladder and hits her head and is knocked out, and Nat also falls down the ramp, but then she turns and just sees Bert lying there and calls out to her and doesn't get any response. And, you know, I have a very vivid memory. In our accident, a car ran a red light and went right in front of us, and the motorbike went straight into the side of the car. And I was thrown into the intersection, and Rachel just hit the side of the car and ended up basically right where the accident happened. And so, you know, I was thrown probably a couple dozen feet and ended up in the middle of the intersection. And, you know, first I saw that my leg was broken, and I was like, I probably shouldn't look at that anymore. And then I looked over and saw Rachel lying there with her back to me, just like in the fetal position on the ground, just not moving. And, you know, I called out to her, and I didn't know if she was alive or not. And that's a crazy position to be in. And that's the position that Nat was in. It's just like, I see you lying there. I don't know what's happened to you. And I can't. Because I, like, the kind of, like, unbearable moment in that scene where Nat is just, like, dragging herself across the floor to Bert is, like, something that I didn't do because I started to. And then people ran up to me and were like, stop. Like, okay, like, I'm going to go check on her. You stay here, right? But... you know, that moment of uncertainty when somebody you care about is like clearly injured and you don't know how bad. It was a crazy thing to live through, and I'm glad that, you know, for us it worked out because we're both pretty much fine now. You know, it was one of those things where when I realized I was writing this scene, I kind of knew some of the things that had to go into it, but it doesn't always make it that easy to actually have to like live back through to put it into the game.
The drone bay, the bones of it, are based on this wonderful piece of concept art we have by Rebecca Mock, who has long been one of my favorite illustrators. So I wasn't able really to hit all of the details here in our concept art for the final room, but I think, you know, we managed to get the broad strokes of it. And some of the things, some of the assets, like the door up at the top, we had to reuse from previous versions of the station or previous areas in the station. But I think it turned out pretty cool and pretty dramatic, and I like this room a lot because it feels like a stage in how theatrical it is. It's how, like, it has the central focus of the drone itself and the raised areas and basically like actors. And, you know, it was one of the final rooms, I think, to actually come together. But yeah, drone room, I really like it.
To withhold information from Natalie.
This crossword puzzle is sort of an intense repository of extra world building that we didn't get in anywhere else.
It's true. Well, we have a whiteboard in our office that had a bunch of different kind of like world building universe details that we had decided on at different points in development.
Yeah.
And only some of them were mentioned naturally in like emails or dialogue or whatever. So this crossword was a good place to just sort of jam in a Rosetta Stone of like what else is happening on Earth and in orbit that you don't see on Tacoma. Something that's fun about doing speculative fiction is being able to do weird, obscure universe building stuff, but you also never really want to like foreground that and make it be like understand every detail of our stupid lore. You have to deal with it. But people that actually really care about that stuff are probably willing to do a fictional crossword puzzle to understand like all of the underpinnings of the year 2088.
I don't know if people can do this crossword puzzle if they don't like actually know the answer.
It's true. I think that, well, like one challenge with this was just like fitting the clues and a crossword puzzle onto one page.
Yeah, that was legible.
Right, so you could actually read it when you examined it. And I think that there might be a couple fewer lines on the puzzle than there are clues.
That might be.
So I'm sorry if you can't actually complete this crossword puzzle, but the Venturer magazine doesn't really do careful quality control because they don't care.
They don't care at all.
Sorry, everybody.
Yeah. At one point, I decided to make a variety of beer that was named the same as your small child.
Yes.
It's true.
It was a surprise.
Yeah, did we surprise you with it?
You guys pranked me.
I needed more stuff to put on the packaging because there's always basically infinite things that you have to put on packaging, and I'm like, I can't read that much about your child. What am I going to do? So I asked Steve for, I was like, do you have any good timing quotes? Because you're a very quotable person. And so Steve looked up some old tweets of yours, and we kind of put them on the beer cans.
You kind of put them on the beer cans.
Kind of.
So I think we should set up the one detail that's missing here.
Oh,
That's very
which one's
important to me. I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, that's important, right? Yeah, I had no idea. So that's why it's a prank. It's not a prank that it's my daughter's name. The real prank
it's all prank.
Here's your goofy words.
God, they're so good though.
On a can.
Okay, great.
And you'll have access code.
Okay.
Here's the technical access code.
Okay. You don't let her go to sleep.
Was there something special about the wedding ring put back?
Originally, the way that Chivo worked is you had to pick it up and carry it all the way back to the ship, and then you had to finish the game with either it in your hand or it just kind of within the confines of the ship, so there was a tracker volume, but now you just click it and it's implied that Amy like puts it in her pocket.
I see. That's cool. Yeah, I always imagined like there would be some weird wedding ring put back, like a little like cup. A wedding ring cup in Amy's ship.
Have like one of those ring holder hands.
Yeah. Oh yeah. The ring cup. Those are so creepy.
Not all of the AR fragments have voice clips associated with them, and not all of them are like primarily concerned with music, but this is the AR fragments are our space to put diegetic music into the game to basically hear the music that characters were listening to when these moments happened. The music element of AR fragments was a cool place to be able to involve different musicians in Tacoma. The band that Nat is listening to here and that's in Sarah's bunk is a band called Floating Room that are a Portland band that we discovered during the development of the game, and they had like a feel to their music that we thought really fit. They also play the end credits music
And our launch
in
party.
the game, and they played at our launch party, which was really sweet of them.
Yes.
And our friend Matt Burns, who is a musician and also works in the games industry as a writer and a producer, provided us the music for Nat's office. Patrick did at least one of the tracks.
Did the one in Bert and Nat's bunk.
Yeah. And some of it, was like public domain stuff like the old-timey jazz music. But yeah, it was just another way to get a cool variety of contributions from different artists and performers into the game.
One of the things that happens when you're working with a smaller team is that you can have interactions with everyone on the team, and that is something that I dearly miss. That was certainly almost true, I would say, of my earliest games, the Starfighter games at LucasArts. I had connection with a large amount of the team because our engineering group was pretty small in that, and so we all wore multiple hats. So I worked with all of the designers and many of specific types of artists. So we had environment artists that I often worked a lot with, but maybe not the artists who made the ships. Here, literally every person on the team I can have spent some time with and talked about some particular aspect that I need to know about, or to help them do their job better if possible. So that's a thing that's greatly changed moving to this. When I worked on larger teams with big teams of engineers, I spent almost all of my time with engineers, and it was only when specific designers or artists had specific needs of our group that they would come to me. I didn't really have the chance to just kind of walk around and spend time with individual artists or designers, which is something I dearly missed, and actually is a big part of why I've become an independent again and doing consulting, is to have the opportunity to work directly with people and see myself more on the screen as a result as well. We're here to talk about working together as programmers. It's interesting because it has been a while since I've worked with someone for whom this was a first game.
Yep.
And that is unusual. So I have a almost 20-year history now in games, and
I have a 3-year history in working in games now.
That's right.
Well, I was kind of thrown into the deep end when I was hired. We didn't have any other programmers, so having others come onto the project was super exciting for me.
Yeah. Yes, it's funny because you think of programmers as working in a vacuum, but the truth is I think we benefit a lot from a meetings of the minds to be able to pass on just whatever bits and bobs I could think of to pass along as I encountered things working with you.
Well, one of the things Brett really helped me with was being more aware of how I was using processing power and memory and all sorts of things, like making the stuff I was writing more efficient. And as that became more and more of a concern later down on the road, I became much more aware of like, oh, I was doing this in a super unsustainable way.
Yeah, a lot of that's just, accruing experience, and the best way to pass that on is to be able to talk over it with someone. I mean, certainly I have been doing throughout my career, but that has changed over time. There's been a lot less direct mentorship later in my career because the teams are large and established, and I'm giving a lot of guidance, but not necessarily. I'm generally working with people who are more experienced, and so I don't have to pass those tidbits along, or they may have tidbits of their own that I'm picking up as well. So anyway, that's all been kind of a terrific part of this project for me in particular.
I will take any tidbits you have to share.
I did most of the product labels in Tacoma. I had some help from some of our contract artists, but I feel like I spent most of my time on this game just making up boxes for things. And honestly, I'm a stickler for detail, but my only real secret is just research the hell out of it. Just look up everything you can find that is in that space as a product and try to distill the main concepts into something that you can make happen.
There's a Christmas duck in Nat's bunk, which is very jolly and lights up and sings a song. And Patrick composed the lovely song, and I kind of set it up to be interactive so you can click it to turn it on and off and stuff. Where did the song come from for you?
Yeah, the main thing was just to kind of get that classic kind of MIDI piano sound, almost like the sound like when you open greeting cards and they play those like obnoxious tones at you. So it's just it's just a piano sound that I like really bit reduced and simulated sending it through a really small speaker. To kind of sell the idea that it was maybe cheaply manufactured.
Oh my god, that's so cool. Wait, so did you were playing it through like a real physical tiny speaker?
Yeah, like a tiny speaker. Yeah.
Oh my god, that's so cool.
Yeah, super analog. Yeah, but I love the Christmas duck just because, I don't know, it's one of those moments that feel like really personal when the player kind of stumbles across it. At least it did for me when I was playing through and found it. So.
So the concept behind One Vein is that they are an augmented reality boy band, which is to say one of them is a physical person, i.e. Marcus, and the other two are...
projections.
Like alternate personalities,
entities.
kind of.
Like Hatsune Miku.
Much like.
But they do look like real people as opposed to...
It's true. It's
And importantly, the song that Nat is listening to in the shower was written by our one intern, Dylan, who's amazing.
Yes.
And he just wrote the One Vein song, the official One Vein song, and you can get it on Bandcamp.
Yeah.
And so he brought life to the One Vein band and wrote the lyrics
and sang each part.
In
character.
Which is exactly like what the fiction is, 'cause
Right.
it's the one guy.
Exactly.
So it's basically perfect. Like, I remember there was one day where we were in the office and we were talking about naming them, and it was somehow like went from Veiny Johnny to Wizard Marcus and Marcus.
Well, I thought I thought that it basically started as us saying that the character's going to have different archetypes, kind of. You know, because a lot of boy bands, it's like, he's the bad boy with a leather jacket, and he's the sporty guy, and he's the nice guy with glasses. And so we were like, well, there's Marcus, who's just the general sexy, stylish boy band guy. And then there's Veiny Johnny, who's the sports boy. And then we were like, and then what else? It's like, what if one of them was just a wizard or a magician or some sort of magic user?
Probably Tynan came up with that. Let's be honest.
Well, I mean, if it was Tynan, he would have been like, one of them's a skeleton warrior.
That's a good point.
But yeah, I think we were like, what are their archetypes? One of them could be a wizard. And then from there, we were just riffing, and we were like, what if his name was just Wizard Marcus? Because he was the wizard version of Marcus.
So good.
And now we live in hell.
By the way, I like that the human boy is just the all-purpose
regular.
boy.
General.
And then like somehow sports is like a fantasy thing
very
alongside
special.
wizards.
Yeah, it's fine.
Accurate.
Sports are fantasy.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, I'm Nat. Pleased to meet you.
Hello, I am Odin. I look forward to working together.
Same here, mate.
I come from this background, art-wise, of illustration. When I first went to school, it wasn't for games. It was for book illustration. And, you know, it's a very traditional... a lot of the tools that you work with, if you're not working with Photoshop, are literally things like paint and scratchboard and very physical media. And eventually, in my career, I decided I really wanted to work in games. So, you know, I moved to digital and 3D tools like Maya and ZBrush, and in this case, more recently, the Substance programs. There's this evolutionary biology idea of the Red Queen's race, where the faster you run, the more you stand still, sort of thing. And with game art, because it's constantly evolving, all the technology's changing all the time, everyone's making new tools, always finding new ways of making things look cool, there's this process of always learning that, I mean, you always have to learn in illustration too, yeah, but kind of once you get a handle on painting, you sort of know what you're in for. But with game art tools, the moment you feel like you've mastered a game art tool is the moment a new one comes out that does something even better. So it's a very exciting world to work in, but at the same time, if you don't like learning things, it's, you know, it can be quite difficult, and sometimes it is frustrating. But, you know, the principles of it are more or less, they sort of stay the same. So, you know, if you're struggling with it at all, it's basically the patience that is the main skill you have to learn for game art. It's not necessarily whether you know Maya or not, it's whether or not you stick with it. But yeah, game art, it's a lot.
Network technology is a funny wing for me because I made the gray block of it at least 3 separate times, like starting from scratch, like literally building the wing from scratch 3 separate times in gray block form, which is more than any other wing. And it was also, I think, one of the earliest wings that I worked on. Because it was one of the earliest gray blocks that I was doing, I was adding all sorts of like different purposed rooms to the wing originally, and in the process of like cutting a lot of those rooms and making the space more focused, it just made the most sense to like scrap the whole level and start from scratch. So the core of it would be designed to support a more focused space.
Right. Cutting off a bunch of rooms and just being left with a weird swirly hallway or core that is no longer necessary can just be kind of like you're left with a strange shape.
Yeah. And also, like, even though I was remaking it, like the core concept was still there. Like I kept that circular staircase kind of thing in it from the beginning and never fully trashed that idea. So it was more like iteration to preserve and refine the good elements that I really enjoyed making, and then yeah, being able to like reshape that to fit the more concise idea of the space was good.
That is the location I mentioned.
You're there? You're gonna need a crowbar or something.
No, it's open. It's just hanging open.
What?
I must inform you that Ventura's regulations forbid contracting crew members direct access to AI hardware. But I cannot prevent you from proceeding.
Nat, I'm going in.
Okay, just be careful.
Odin's wetware is this little drawer that, with the gold handle that Amy pulls out of this pillar and takes back to her ship. And the player doesn't really get a long look at Odin during the little animation that plays. So I am including a little snapshot render of the model itself. When we first started talking about Odin's design, like not Odin the room, but Odin the actual, this little individual piece of wetware, Carla had mentioned the shapes and forms of a Romanesco cauliflower. And in my first version of the model, I'd actually taken up an alpha or a black and white height map, essentially, of a Romanesco cauliflower and sort of pressed it into the actual model to get the shapes. But it was a bit noisy and it didn't really read as intended. It made some cool patterns, but you know, it was also a little cluttered visually. So we did a second pass on the model, and we made him look more brain-like, more wetware-like, more organic. And in Odin 2.2, you know, it felt more like a living piece of technology than the previous rendition had. And I remember spending a lot of time painting out the little veins and things in there. And I really like how gross it looks. This is another part of it. I tried to make it as glossy and weird as I could, so that's Odin. He's actually, you know, he's a handsome voice in a gross little box.
When Steve asked me to voice Sergio, he didn't exactly say that Sergio was the villain of the story, but I could tell by the way he described Sergio, sort of smooth, confident, the public face of a big corporation, that he probably wasn't going to be the hero. So when I got the script, I learned that Sergio speaks in monologues rather than dialogue with other characters. That got me thinking about how video games present characters through PA systems or audio logs. So I was thinking about games like System Shock 2 and of course BioShock and Andrew Ryan. So I began to think about how to convey Sergio's villainy in a sort of video gamey way, which is to say, not how I normally teach actors to work, which means the kind of acting you typically find in video games. It sort of insists that the actor wear that one defining thing about a character on his sleeve. So villains sound properly villainous. So when it came time to record, I asked Steve and Carla what they were looking for, and Steve just said, "Be yourself." And I was like, And Steve said, "No, we really want you to just be your kind of genial, soothing self. Don't play the villainy, just play it straight," which I translated to mean find the truth, which is what actors do. There are a lot of things to admire about Tacoma, but for me, it's the naturalness of the performances that really delivers the characters and roots them in a believable reality. It's the way that we don't tell you what you're supposed to think or feel about these characters, and the way we don't distill our roles into easily recognizable types. As actors, we make choices that trust the player to construct meaning on her own rather than pulling from a bag of tricks that every actor owns. I think when you trust your actors like that, you're really communicating a sense of trust in your players as well.
Is this... What is all this? Communication records?
I cannot prevent you from accessing exposed data in this restricted area.
Yes. Yeah, he's recording. It is with great sadness that I address you today. February 29th, 2088. Mere hours ago, 6 loyal men and women, the crew of Lunar Transfer Station Tacoma, lost their lives serving Venturis, and all of us who rely on the orbital economy. Tragically, due to human error on the part of the crew, Venturis rescue technicians were not made aware of the catastrophic oxygen loss until it was too late. Our heartfelt thoughts and prayers are with their families. If only tragedies like this were avoidable. But in truth, they are. As we know, each minute that human workers spend stationed isolated in orbit is another opportunity for heroes like the crew of Tacoma to lose their lives. We at Venturis say no more. The partisan obstructionism that led to the failure of the Orbital Workers' Safety Bill has claimed its last victim. Today, we hereby renew our solemn pledge to fight for the legalization of fully automated orbital facilities. We encourage, we humbly beg everyone listening to this message to contact their OSEP representative and voice their support in honor of the crew of Tacoma. There never need be another tragedy like this one. And now, a moment of silence in their memory. Okay, and then we just cut it there, silent for a minute, and then what, Amazing Grace? No, I don't need another take. That was fine.
Odin, thank you. Hailing any ship within radio range of Lunar Transfer Station Tacoma. This is an SOS. Is anybody out there?
If someone were to override that protocol, external communications channels would be restored.
Odin, thank you. Hailing any ship within radio range of Lunar Transfer Station Tacoma. This is an SOS.
He's still waking up. Just keep him talking.
So the drone worked?
No, the drone didn't work.
Oh, so VT is picking us up.
No, VT is definitely not picking us up.
Well, what's going on then?
We're going to Jupiter, Andrew. Isn't that exciting?
I've never been.
Nat, give him a break.
We're not going to be home for a while. Right, you're not going to miss your kid's graduation or anything, are you?
Oh, Nicholas, no. Yeah, you know Nicholas, why he would never do something like that.
She said they'd be kind of out of it for a while.
Andrew, what's important is we're getting out of this alive. We're going to be somewhere where VT can't touch us for a good, long while. We're going to be safe.
Okay, good.
Yeah, it's good. Hi, Evie, Clive. You feeling okay?
I'm feeling okay.
We're feeling okay?
Yeah.
Okay, everybody. Our ride is here. This is it. Take one last look and say goodbye. All right. Let's go.
Are you feeling warming yet, darling?
So, the cryopods here in Hub are meant to freeze the crew in case of emergency. And these pods can be seen through the cryo room window in Hub from the very beginning of the game. To not ruin the story or the mystery of whether the crew are in the pods or not, I tried to make a script that would effectively make it so the glass on the cryopods is opaque and then slowly becomes transparent as you move in. However, when I was making this script, there was a fun event. The test color I used, it was a blood red. It did look like the cryopods were all filled with blood, which then kind of dissipated into a mist as you approached. This is the kind of thing you want to show your fellow teammates. And before I did that, I decided to get the skeleton model that is in medical and put one in every one of the cryopods, and then call people over and have them give it a shot. It's the kind of thing you really want to do when you're showing off a new feature.
Waking up.
How many fingers is this?
Okay, lovebirds. Your vitals look good. Let's get you moving. The resplendent stinging is just about docked.
Oh, do we have to?
Oh, we have to. Believe me. So what's going to happen with Odin?
You said there was some sort of malfunction?
No, not exactly. But
my guess, they'll have somebody up here and haul him back to headquarters. Right back to the can't touch us. We'll probably have to replace the station AI entirely while he regrows.
Odin?
Yeah.
Let that happen.
That's good.
Don't worry. Bye.
The cleaner bot was originally made when the game was a lot more zero-G, and it was meant to fly everywhere and kind of add personality and also life to a place that would otherwise be empty.
Well, one of the things I like about the bot, Tynan, it's one of the few characters in the game that you feel like you can really dynamically play around with. Like, you can actually touch that character and like throw it around. And the fact that it doesn't have a ton of animation, as a sound designer, I really love characters like that because it means that I can express pretty much anything I want. It's almost like a blank canvas. So randomly, like, the cleaner bot will kind of talk to you, but it only says like 3 or 4 things. It was just an opportunity to have it sort of respond to you and the world.
So was it you? Were you the bot? Who was the voice actor?
Oh, like of the actual voice.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, it's my husband, Mark, actually. Yeah, like I grabbed him when he got home, and it was really funny because, you know, whatever, like we all make games, you know, and Mark does not, and he like kept on. It's like the longest recording session I've ever been in, dude. It was like 3 files, and he literally wanted to just read it over and over and over, and I was trying to explain to him that it didn't really matter because I was going to manipulate it so much, and I just sat there patiently recording for like 30 minutes, these like 3 wave files. He is super proud of the cleaner bot, though.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Minnie, I'm back.
Okay. Ship is ready to depart. Please strap into the pilot seat.
The fun thing for us about where Tacoma ends up is that the whole game has been about Amy, who's voiced by Sarah Grayson, who did the voice of Sam in Gone Home, coming into contact finally with Odin, who's voiced by Carl Lumbly, who played Porter in Minerva's Den, and them kind of getting to be cool friends and ride off into the sunset together.
And fighting crime.
Yeah, maybe. We don't know.
They're totally fighting crime. They're
That's
fighting
true.
AI crime.
Corporate crime.
Hell yes.
Fair point. And also, you know, I really wanted to have kind of a, like, you know, hell yeah kind of moment at the end and be like, oh, you were there to save him and now you get to escape.
Even if what's going to go on past that point might be a little more difficult.
Right. Like, it's once, you know, it's sort of what Odin implies in the first conversation he has with Sarah, where it's like, once the AILF actually has their hands on an AI, it's not clear if they really know what they're going to do with
Right.
it. But, you know, getting him out of the hands of Venturis is step 1.
Yeah.
And then relying on their sovereignty as a like free orbital
Right.
platform is step 2, I guess.
Yeah.
Maybe, or them having to go into hiding. I don't even
though
know.
Juno is on the track of Amy in some way, and even if Amy's harder to track down than it looks, it still might be a problem.
Yeah, and
Probably.
And so, you know, I think that we don't know where the stories in our games go after the end of the credits. And so I think we're really focused on, you know, what happens within the text and the possibilities of where that could go next, and hopefully those seeming interesting. So, thank you so much for playing through Tacoma with commentary mode enabled.
Played it.
Yeah. We hope that you learned some things about how the game was made and how different people on the team thought about their work than you would have otherwise. And just thank you in general for taking time to play the game.
Nina and Tynan did a shit ton of work cutting up all of these VO files.
Yeah, thank you.
And we should thank them as well.
Thank you, Nina and Tynan, for editing these hundreds of minutes of commentary into the thing that people just played through.
Into concise, beautiful nuggets of information.
Oh, we'll see about that.
They're concise and beautiful.
A lot of them were us talking, so I don't know about beautiful necessarily.
Okay, bye.
Thank you, everybody. See you next time.